All right, so this is take two to this video since unfortunately we had some technical problems. Um, no protagonist swaps have come out recently. If you've been on the live streams, you've heard me mention that I wanted to talk about the God of War scaling situation because we were called out to some extent by some God of War scalers we know that our scaling for God of War is, well, in their words, trash. So I want to give Mangler a chance to explain his scaling in a more condensed level, but I also want to explain in detail, or at least in some more detail, what the protagonist swaps are, how they work. And I also kind of felt that with that in mind, since they feel like they're scaling, that we've misrepresented their character and their scaling, I thought it'd be fair then to actually put Kratos into DMC with the scaling they give him and without sort of giving him the protagonist swap packages Mangler's put right there. So we'll be going through that. We'll also be discussing some nuances in tier 1 and 2 in the middle there. One will be with PLC without. So Mangler, you're scaling. Go.
So, for my scaling summary, when I usually use uh, versions of Kratos, I want for versus discussions, I obviously prefer, since my favorite version is the Greek Pantheon variations, I will use the Greek Pantheon variations and I refer to them mainly, and I'll ask people this if it's post or pre retcon. And I usually say post retcon and argue that he's in tier three, about like uni to like high uni, somewhere in that range, with like usually infinite speed and pretty much most of the hacks and resistances that he currently already has. Uh, the issue I think a lot of scalers have, aside from me not putting him in tier two, is why do I use the term retcon as if there has been some kind of significant contradiction. And well, as I explained to them, it's because a lot of the statements that have existed for several years now, due to not just Matt Sophos' statements, but Cory Barlog's statements and Bruno Valquez's statements about how the God of War planet works, the various pantheons, the existence of the pantheons, how the mechanics of the pantheons work. Technically, so these these statements don't actually hurt any pantheon that isn't the Greek pantheon. Funny enough, uh, a lot of people. The first misconception I think a lot of people have with this is that they seem to assume that I scale like the Greek and the Norse pantheons comparatively. I don't. I scale the Norse pantheon to a higher capacity, mainly to some tier two stuff,
Yes.
and I don't scale the Greek pantheon to that. Because, as I've said before, I believe that the lore and information presented in a lot of these statements is actually not only like found in the Norse pantheon. The Norse pantheon was actually created with that intent in mind. The Greek pantheon was never created with these statements in mind, because it was never there was never intended to be multiple pantheons when they were making the original God of War games. That was something they came up with at the end of that source material when they wanted to expand more into various mythologies and mythos.
Is the God of War 1 novel and the God of War 2 novel after like God of War 3 or something?
No. Well, so in terms of release order,
Yeah.
or like,
Yeah.
so in release order, the God of War 1 novel was released basically before the events of God of War 3, and the God of War 2 novel was released before the events of Ascension.
Yeah,
So,
the reason I was asking is because like the God of War 1 novel does mention the Egyptian pantheon, right?
yes, yes, all that information and stuff is condensed during the release windows of the games. In fact, they're actually so close to the 3 and Ascensions releases that you can argue they would kind of fall into a similar situation that DMC5's Before the Nightmare is for a 5, where you can argue it's basically what's the term, like, not advertising material, but basically it's
Supplementary material.
yeah, like it's intended to support the official release. It makes sense. Like, it just source material to sort of like bring people's interest more so into the series for like a big release.
Yes.
So, into the statements. So the statements that sort of causes like issues with this, that puts in like the idea of a retcon to me, is Matt Sophos' statements, which explain that all of the pantheons essentially exist simultaneously. that man's history marches on linearly, but the myths and interpretations are all valid. And as he puts it, without getting too deeply into it, it's a combination of geography and local belief system. Ultimately, they all exist sort of simultaneously, and none of them are particularly happy when Kratos is around. So there is another interview with this, which we can get to later, but basically what is revealed is that the pantheons are very much created as a combination of where they're currently located, being their local geography, and the belief system,
Of the locals.
meaning yeah, of the people and the cultures in the regions at that specific time. So the issue I take with this is that when you take this approach as a writer or as an artist, you have to tread very lightly when you create story, because now you have just introduced lore. That means that the context for a lot of scans are very much determined based on what the people believe, and beliefs are determined by knowledge. So I have to determine most accurately what the characters in the pantheons actually know, aside from the actual like aside from the extents of their feats per se, because people just look into the Ascension and they see, well, the primordials are fighting, obviously they're creating like universes. I'm like, yeah, that seems pretty blatantly the intent. But then like these statements come along and they add information that now changes context to it. And as I've said before, the Norse pantheon doesn't really suffer this issue because the Norse are given statements related to like that are different from their original like mythos, and things that are added in addition to their mythos. So information about the Yggdrasil and its relation to time and space that is
Yes.
not really found in the original Norse mythology. Whereas a
That,
lot of the stuff in the Greek, what were you saying, Zim?
also, that's why you have your geocentric and knowledge of galaxies and clusters down here, right?
Yeah, so a lot of the information that's presented on there for the geocentric model and the timeline of knowledge about galaxies, clusters of galaxies, etc. That's to explain that basically these are a lot of what the Greeks and various like classical like ancient civilizations in the early 500 like BC range actually believe, and we can actually jot the Greek pantheon down to a sort of science. Um, if you guys do want a little bit more information on this, you can always check out our first why God of War versus Kratos matchup doesn't work, where I explain the cosmology,
I'll
and I do
probably
go
link
over it, and I
these.
mentioned
Oh, so
what.
I'll probably link these in the comment too, so people want to check
Yeah,
out these articles more directly.
probably. So what I mention is that like Plato, as well as things like the Persian invasion of Attica, are referenced directly in the novels, which actually gives us a timeline for what year the events are occurring, and those usually occur in around the 420 era. Plato is actually only active in the 420s
Ah,
to like I think
so
the
he's a
480s.
420 kind of guy.
Look, the point is that we have a consistent time frame based on the statements. And when I go through the Greek pantheon, I try to decide, well, what's different among these characters. Well, there's not a lot. Like a lot of the Greeks still act very much the same way. They still have almost the exact same technology. Actually, I would argue they have identical technology, with the exception of certain like people who I identify are like geniuses, like Daedalus. Though even Daedalus still arguably does all of the same feats he does in the Mythos. We're just given like a better artistic representation of them due to like God of War 3's like engine and a lot of that. It like really brings it to life. But ultimately, most of the stories of the Greek heroes like Theseus, Perseus, Jason and the Argonauts, like a lot of these characters, not only are their stories directly referenced, they're directly talked about by the characters themselves in the novels and in the guidebooks, and they finish most of the events of their stories. The major differences there, along with the differences of a lot of the original Greek mythos, is the involvement of Kratos. So if I take Kratos out of the story, obviously it's not really God of War then, but if I take Kratos out of the story, that actually eliminates the only like major difference between that and the original Greek mythos.
So you're claiming
Which
there's not enough of a difference to say that it's like not just ripping directly
I
from it?
no, because the actual knowledge of the characters, the people of the Greek mythology, like the Greeks in general, not just the gods, but the average citizen, the heroes, the inventors, the events as they exist in the timeline, there's not enough major differences. And the major differences that do come about, such as like Ares dying, being killed by the evils inside the Pandora's box, the gods being corrupted by the evils, Kratos going on a killing spree in God of War 3 and murdering all the gods, a lot of these happen as a direct result of just Kratos's life in general and just his existence in the story. So if you pluck him from the story, this doesn't really happen. And I don't know how much more blatant this could be if you just go check just go check Ghost of Sparta. Like Ghost of Sparta literally makes it a mission that an oracle makes a prediction about there being a marked warrior who would bring about the downfall of Olympus and the reign of the gods. And the gods literally go out, take Deimos, who technically is supposed to be Kratos at this time, and they drag him off to the domain of death because they're afraid that he's going to put an end to their reign. Obviously, the prophecy ends up coming true because they take the wrong guy.
As is tradition in Greek pantheon,
What?
as is tradition in Greek stories.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of Greek stories have that similar mythos as well, where prophecies are supposed to happen, and people try to. A lot of it just has to do with the themes of people's choices and fate and whatnot. It's a very popular thematic tool, a very good writing tool, I would say. So, when I explain the post retcon, like pre retcon mentality, basically I would be explaining that like what the Greeks believe in the region of the time is the only like real measurement of context that we can give to a lot of these what would otherwise be universal feats, which is why I've mentioned the idea of Kratos being tier 6. It's because of that post retcon mentality. However, as I've said before, I use pre retcon anyway. I just argue that these statements throw like a fucking nail in the leg of any person who tries to argue that like Kratos's like lore was never retcon. Like you really have to kind of skip and trip over a lot of director statements and cherry pick a lot of director statements to argue that that's not true, because a lot of the directors contradict each other mostly all the time. Even then, if you take issues with this, again, you could always either use composite variations or, well, you could just do what the God of War guys are doing right now and just backscale.
You mean
There are
the
ways.
correct scaling?
Oh my gosh, there are ways that
I actually do
people like to
backscaling.
get around this. Yeah, backscaling in particular was one of the things that was actually done to get around a lot of the arguments that people presented, because they realized I didn't disagree with certain arguments for tier 2 scaling for God of War 4, as I don't. I personally scale the God of War 4 cast to at least Uni Plus.
Your humility is just astounding. Truly an
A
inspiration to us all.
lot of God of War scalers find that to be acceptable, though they obviously would like it to be higher. Um, so they just thought, yeah, well, using that logic, why don't I just backscale it? It's like, I guess. I disagree with that, but I guess that is a way to go.
Totally not because there are statements or anything. No,
There's totally not any statements that contradict that position or anything. Yeah, no.
wow.
The point is that I'm saying like my scaling has reasoning behind it. It's not like I didn't ask pull my scaling out of nowhere. I went through every single piece of source material
Do
in the
you
Greek.
do you want to show your physical copy
Yeah,
of all the
hang on.
source material?
One moment though, I must use the restroom,
All
and
right.
then after that I will come back, and if you like me to, I will take a physical video of all of my physical media to show people exactly what I'm talking about.
That is fine.
Okay,
All
hold
right.
on one moment.
All right. So yeah, that's more or less Mangler's whole scaling chain there. The reason I wanted him to go over his like main where the main differences spread from is because not only when I was talking to TG and K and them, the God of War guys I was talking to, this seemed to be one of the bigger, at least what I saw, divides between what they would scale. And also because there were some people saying that they didn't want to go through 4 hours worth of material to understand why Mangler scales God of War so differently from others. So that is why I wanted him to explain himself. Unfortunately, the videos I don't really feel 100% comfortable playing, and also they're going to be like several minutes, and then there's a lot of scans already we're going to be going through, so it would take too long. But here are the names of the videos. Real easy to look these up. Game. It looks like they're both Game Informer. No, one's GameSpot, one's Game Informer. There's no timestamp on this one specifically. Not sure why. He didn't really talk about this one, but it's talking about the creation of their universes. However, in this particular case, he does mention that the universe is just a domain they roll over. So, yeah, so referring to the universes that they themselves have dominion over. So, again, you could argue that right there means universe. Again, depends on how you want to interpret it. I just want Mingler to explain himself. And I'm just showing the scans he himself provided, but at the end of the day, just wanted, to give a pretty concise reason as to why the scaling is so different.
Okay, so this is going to take a second because there are a lot of these books. Oh my goodness.
That is fine. I'm asking Mangler to show his credibility, so to speak, when it comes to this.
My credibility have to be scattered all over the fucking floor.
Because so like I mentioned in a live stream, I think to somebody, despite what people might say about Mangler and Kyle scaling, they did go through every single game, and they have access to practically every single form of physical media that God of War has produced outside of that, which, from what I've been told, is actually more than some other God of War scalers do have. That's not specifically in reference to any particular God of War scaler either. I've heard of a lot of them.
Might be all of it. There might be more. Wait, no, there's another one.
Because there was actually one scan that we never found in any of the guidebooks or anything regarding Kratos creating his own laws.
Yeah, so that one, like a lot of scans that are sourced by the God of War scalers, funny story, the person that actually goes and verifies that information is me, not them. Which is kind of ironic because you would think people who've been scaling the series for years would like have a lot of the source material. I guess it's just because I purchased a lot of physical media, but like if you want to source something, you have to go and get the source material. You can't rely on other people to go and do it for you unless there's like some weird like financial situation. But I'm assuming that's probably not the case. All right, let me see if I can organize these real quick, and then I'll set up a thing. Like, oh my god, there's so much. Okay, so there's a God of War 1 manual, Prima thing.
Yeah, so while Mangler's setting that up so we can see the actual complete, like, collection he's amassed. Yeah, so, like, that scan was in the God of War 1 guidebook, even though, like, the people, Kyle and Mangler were like, that's from God of War 1. So, what did you guys have to go get, actually? It's like a fucking compilation guidebook or something?
No. So it's basically, okay, so it's essentially a God of War collection guide. It's supposed to say the ultimate guide for God of War 1 and God of War 2. So it combines the elements of the Brady's game and Prima game guides for God of War 1. Well, I don't know if there's actually a Brady's game guide for God of War 1. There's a Prima game guide for God of War 1. Funny story, all of the other guides for the games, as far as the what's it called? As far as like the main Greek games, with the exception of Ascension, are all Brady's games. For some reason, God of War 1 is the only one that has a Prima guide. Really weird. But God of War 2, God of War Collection 1, that's actually the one that's released for the PS3 port of God of War 1 and God of War 2.
Yes.
Let me switch now to DOS.
Be careful not to show yourself. Unfortunately, last time Devil was messing around, he ended up face revealing himself off stream. All right.
Okay. I think you can see it now. Yes.
You gotta hold up a little more, but I can't see your bed.
Okay. So
there we go.
We have over here, I'm gonna have to go left to right. So I have the Chains of Olympus guide right here. The God of War 1 novel right here. The Prima guide for God of War 1. The instruction manual for God of War one, which is better days. The Ghost of Sparta guide, right there. A limited edition one for God of War 2, which includes its art book and its official strategy guide. Basically the same thing as like these, except it has like an additional art book.
Is that a
This
hardcover?
collection one, which has the aforementioned scan about the law manipulation stuff. Funny enough, like most of these pages, if you were to look into them, they actually don't have like a lot of original text for their enemy descriptions and things because they're copy pasted from this guide respectively and this guide respectively because it's supposed to be the combination of these two. It's actually kind of
So yeah,
interesting.
because that law of manipulation only exists in that collection one, right?
Yes, it only exists in that one, and really the only scans that you want are in the first couple pages. And
And
then you have God of War 2's novel, which company's God of War 2, the Fallen Gods comic, which company that. There is a 2010 comic that I haven't purchased the physical media for, but then I also got the God of War 4 novel or novelization as well.
that has
I
not been dusted off.
hang on.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm back. Now I'm back on the computer.
Okay.
So that's all my physical media for the moment. I do have access to links to a PDF copy for the God of War Freeze guidebook. There was just like due to my like work on the project, I didn't want to like I had not just done the work for myself, but several other people, such as Balrog, and we had split up certain
Avatar games.
like financial investments in some of these things because it was quite expensive to
Yes.
acquire a lot of this.
I was
So,
unaware you actually had the God of War 2 guidebook and that like that version of it.
yes, that was actually the second version I have. There's another one that was brought because the person did not deliver all the properties that I wanted when I ordered on Amazon, and I was very upset. So yeah, the only thing that I would really be missing is like that 2010 comic, but I have a link to it online. I can buy the physical copy and then like the physical version of like God of War Freeze
Yeah.
thing. So I'm missing two things, but I've already read them and I have two copies of them, and I could go and purchase them, but they've been like sort of purchased. So like I would really just have them physically on my person. I plan on purchasing them at a later moment. But yeah,
Yeah.
I have currently more physical media I think in front of me than most of the God of War scalers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so
So
the idea here is just show that, yes, regardless of how you feel about Mangler's decisions, he does have all the source material. We have all the scans. Look through it all. That's, came to this conclusion. So,
I did not create the statements out of my butthole. They were made after looking through all of this several times. Also, those things were actually very useful for gameplay purposes.
all right.
But
So,
we're not going to talk about that.
with that said, that's more or less covering Mangler's scaling and sort of like quote unquote credentials behind it. So, moving on to part two of this video, explaining the video editing style. I did think this was necessary. Mangler kind of thinks it is, so figured to explain how these videos kind of work, so to speak. If you've been here long enough, you would recognize what categories these are falling into.
So basically, this is something that I think to an extent a lot of YouTubers and content creators on YouTube actually have. They probably just don't lay it out, right? Like in an official format and give a name to it. But it's something that I decided to give more than a couple months ago. It's still something that like Zim always categorized a lot of his videos as. He just never like, he never wrote it down to say a thing. But
Yeah.
like to start it off, basically the way that we categorize certain videos and the level of importance is determined by how much editing is done on the video and how long it takes the video to actually come out. So
Yes.
the basic level would be like no edits. So these things, as the text says in the Discord chat, is just self-explanatory, little to no edits. So that would be examples of videos like we're talking like actual videos, not streams. It would be like just some background footage reviewing something, maybe even like a reaction video or something.
Videos, anytime we're just discussing things in like just chat between, like the Moondis videos will probably be like a no edits. The Moondis
Protagonist
videos.
swaps would also be that as well because
Yes.
we don't have to format or script anything for those. Like even if I may like scroll up here and there's like, oh, here's like Bayonetta's weapons for a Bayonetta protag swap. It's like we don't even I don't think we even opened that up.
We did
That's
not.
just there for
That,
reference if we
that,
need it.
that, that would require editing on my end.
Yeah, no, like even like opening up new windows requires like a lot of editing. So
Because when it comes to no edit videos, they're meant to be we're having fun, and then hopefully you guys would have fun. It's pretty self-explanatory, but some people might not understand that.
also, the point of a no edits video is not that research hasn't been done. Every video that we do is done after research.
Yes.
We do not make claims and statements about verses that we have not investigated or done research on. No edits is simply that
At least on
we're not-
videos. On stream might happen, but on videos, no.
streams are different, but actual video content we do not do that. That is not a part of our policy. Not part of my policy when I
Yeah.
collaborate with Zim on his channel.
That's not part of my policy either, regardless of how badly you guys think my research is.
So if you don't see scans in there, that's not because we don't have them. It's because it usually takes a very long time to edit certain videos, and we're going to get into that when we enter the next section. Also, anyone who wonders where the Urizen Gauntlet runs go, they fall under this as well.
Yes.
Because they require very little effort to produce.
I don't think anyone's going to come after us talking about our own series, though.
I mean, they might.
The one Malthus fan's going to come out of the woodwork and be like, you're all wrong.
Why do you downplay my hacks, Lord? So the low edits falls into the category of something like this. This video is a low edit. So we basically have an outline. So that would mean putting categorizations and formats on Discord. So like here's section 1, section 2, section 3, like divvying up portions of the video.
And
we have some outline.
Scans in the entire thread that people are going to be looking at. Just nothing that's actually going to be like edited on top of it. You're just going to see it on screen and hopefully zoomed in if the pictures allow it, because text doesn't.
Yeah, they'll still be somewhat off the cuff as well. Like how we script isn't like, this is still off the cuff, I would say, at recording, but it's not like we're not heavily scripted in what it is we're exactly saying.
We just have sections where we're going to be talking about specific things, and then beyond that, which hopefully might help with timestamps a little bit, but I don't timestamp that.
They do. They move us around a little bit. An example of these things would be obviously like this video, and for those of you who are wondering, the protagonist, or not the protagonist swap, the why Dante versus Kratos doesn't work. Those two videos, those are actually low edits videos. So like the amount of scans and information and arguments that was presented in there and condensed into that was a low edits process. Those are not the highest quality versions of our videos, and we were not trying to make like certain points as blatantly obvious. Like we could have edited it more to make it even more in your face, per se. I just provide that example just because a lot of people seem to have issues with like certain like long
videos.
Long videos, long-term videos, and like obviously when they get scripted a little bit better, they're a little bit more enjoyable to watch. I understand that, but like huge amounts of research will still be done even in the low edits videos. Some of these videos can take like weeks on end.
Like
this one took like 20-30 hours, and it was literally just me posting scans.
Yes, because Mangler's burden of proof is a lot higher than most, so Mangler has to satisfy his own burden of proof with his own claims.
No. People's expectation of me is, and I always deliver, but
I mean, in fairness, when we're making DMC claims, we literally have to drag the entire planet and then some in order to get people to agree.
Even though we have usually more evidence than most people who would make the same claims for their verses. So,
oh
my god. That is like one example. So then we get into the medium edits. So this is where we get into proper scripting formats. These videos on average can take sometimes even a month or longer to upload. So
and collaborations,
I would say
absolutely.
The DMC2 reference video and certain reference videos would be examples of these, where they're fully edited. We have like gameplay or something going on in the background, and there's just nothing but the scans. and we're kept to like a light script. We talked about it and communicated about it over a longer
Yes.
period of time. Not that we don't do that in earlier ones, but this one very much so. It's like a very important part of our process.
Yeah, that's the ones where there's a lot of discussion going on. It's somewhat focused, but not like laser tight or airtight, so to speak. And again, there's scans in there, but it's mainly just background gameplay, no like Discord footage, and just scans popping up when relevant.
Mm-hmm.
And the heavy edits is really easy to understand. It's literally just any video I make that's like probably, well, for the most part, outside of collaborations, because we haven't actually produced a heavy edited collaboration video yet. That's still in the works currently.
Nice.
That'd be like the Fruit Urizen video, my like some of my how powerfuls. Not all of them are edited, but the ones that are would be examples of that.
Yeah. Generally, also like we could present something I was gonna say is just like the amount of scans doesn't determine how many like things it is. Yes, it could be correlative. Like obviously, if I'm putting 200 scans in a video compared to like 30, it's going to take more time than it would to do the 30. But depending on the format I make, it might be longer to even do the 30 than it would be to do the 200. It really depends. So.
We have to drag this guy kicking and screaming sometimes if he doesn't get his 400 scans video.
Seriously. Then we get into the protagonist swap packages, the meat of this discussion, one of the reasons we made this video. So
yes,
the packages are the things that we say around the beginning of the video.
Every time.
Yes, every single fucking time we make the video. I want to be clear to those people who are watching. Every time we make the video, we clarify at the beginning that this character is being given concessions to allow them to be in this verse to make an interesting scenario. It has a brief story summary, but sometimes there are some like little engagements that might happen as a result of that character. But we could have changes to their physiology, their hacks, their AP, their stats. So I do provide an example here. So an example is that if a character is like 2C, they have infinite speed, so they're low multi and infinite speed, and they get dropped in a verse where only the god tiers are like 2C and infinite speed, and they would waste everybody. That's not actually what would happen based on their stats. They would be put in the position of the protagonist currently as far as like their power standing. The difference is that they would just have some of their hacks given. And if there's something really specific to that verse, maybe like a certain power that you need to be able to interact with them, they would be given that power. That would be like the packages, the concessions per se.
They're basically there to make a scenario happen because as we're going to get to a DMC, because this is going to be focusing more on God of War because some people don't realize we do Bayonetta through God of War for some fucking reason.
We literally did 2 videos.
I want to make that clear. We're not just like Kratos isn't the only one moving right now. That's all I'm saying.
Flew under the radar harder than Kyle did.
You mean just Mangler?
Yeah, flew harder than my shadow.
Yeah, so we mentioned consistently. The biggest example that we usually give is like corruption with demonic power for Kratos, shit like that. Like we try to ignore that. We just kind of like sweep it under the rug and pretend it's not there, so to speak. But we'll talk more about that later.
Because it just makes it like more interesting. Then there are changes in the. I'd say the story changes are a bit different. So one of the examples we provided in the DMC2 protagonist thing was that one of the things I didn't think about, Zim pointed this out, was that Kratos can just skip the Jotunheim boss because he has no knowledge of like a motorcycle, nor would he have any understanding of a motorcycle. Thus, he wouldn't have a reason to use it. So he could just be like, "Fuck this! I don't want to fight this boss," and just literally run out of there and just throw like his
blades of chaos across the bridge. Let's go, or blades of whatever.
There's also like certain story scenarios that might happen. So he might. So one of the things that I think was really funny is that he kills Lady in the when he's going through DMC3 just because Lady attacks him, and that technically fucks up Arkham's like plot because Arkham's attending to get her to the
the chamber of fucking sacrifice,
the lair of judgment. Yeah, and he's like, oh shit.
You weren't supposed to do that, but I did.
Like, see those interactions I don't think would be possible with a lot of characters, and like they wouldn't be possible with a lot of hack and slash characters because Kratos is there. Those interactions are able to happen,
I know
and I don't
some
think
people.
people understand like they're more interesting and simple. Certain situations could also happen with Bayonetta and God of War or Dante and certain
Whatever verse he
scenarios.
ends up in.
Yeah, whatever universe he ends up in.
I would like to point out that like I know some people might like have mentioned like why don't you discuss like characters' personality or give it a more narrative focus because we're not here right as silly as this sounds, we're not here writing a full-fledged fan fiction, we're just here to have fun.
I literally asked this to Zim. Why don't you give me the ability, and he can testify to this. Why don't you give me the ability to write a story where Kratos pops in and gets into contact with the Ouroboros Corporation
No,
or the Order of the Sword?
bad
And
Mangler, keep your
I
fan
was going to
fictions to
explain how he would be able
yourself.
to use his powers in tangent with demonic power to
Keep
fight
your
and do things
fan
in the verse.
fiction to
And that would be
yourself.
interesting if we could tie it to his like story and his actual narrative. And
Boo.
Zim was like,
Boo.
no. So when anyone tells me that this isn't like a story scenario, that's the fucking point. It's not supposed to be because that got rejected.
I'm sorry, Mangler, but that would require effort on my end, and we don't do that here outside of commissions
Also,
and other
also
things of my
to
interest.
be fair, that would basically be a commission, which we're kind of already on the back burner for, and
Yes.
that would take at least a few weeks. At
Yes.
least
We
best
listen.
case scenario.
Listen. I don't know. You can't hear the squeak. You want to know why? Because we got a commission. Now moving on. But yeah, so yeah, I kind of iced that idea a little bit. If you guys would be interested to do that, and if Mangler wants to do that on his spare time, he can after he's done with some other things.
Done with 3 months worth of labor.
I'm sorry. I am sorry. You get gratitude. You get paid in exposure. But yeah, no. So again, they're meant to be fun. But again, they are meant to be researched to some extent. We, at least for me personally, there was a little bit of confusion to me and Mangler. As Mangler said, he kind of puts the characters as they are in the verse. I just kind of take whatever versus Balwiki says and just throw it at the wall and be
Yeah,
like,
he
there.
also kind of threw that in as well. Like I was willing to use like some VSB stuff. I just said like if we used certain VSBs, like we had to use VSB scaling for a character. It would only be fair for the scenario to give it to like
Yeah, that's
you know.
fair. The only time I would say no to that is when I vehemently disagree with something. Like if you guys ever watched the Bayonetta
Yeah,
protagonist swap, I disagree
we're
with
not
the.
gonna get into that.
No. All right, fine.
That's not what we're here to discuss.
That is fair. That is fair.
Okay.
Thank you, Mangler.
So
But I'm not
now we
wrong
get
though.
into the third section. Now that we've discussed the point of the protagonist swaps,
Yes.
my scaling summary, and the edits process, about debating tier 1 and tier 2 characters and the issues with doing this.
Yes, this is more Mangler's flourish than mine.
So I have wanted to say this for the longest time, but you cannot just and this is addressed to a lot of the scalers who tried to bring up arguments for Kratos like winning in the protagonist swap for 2, completely ignoring the concessions I just mentioned, and the editing process that I mentioned that creates the format for those scans to be presented. You cannot just argue a character wins in a verse because they're like multiversal plus or 2A and have immeasurable speed. You don't just go into a verse and argue that they solo or sweep because they're 2A or immeasurable, that they have like high speed, high power. That is what I refer to as a Dragon Ball argument,
Yes.
where essentially like your win con is I'm faster, stronger, K die. That's it. And maybe you have like one hacks or one thing that's like maybe a couple that are like super useful to you that are maybe even broken perhaps by the standards of your verse, but are just kind of okay in another one. And the reason for this is some of the examples that I provided down here that a lot of tier 2 characters, many 2C characters, several 2B characters, and a shitload
What's you
of 2A
watch doing
characters.
there? He's not
A
tier 2.
shitload of 2A characters have access to tons of things like higher physiologies, higher like immortalities, regens, passives, things like this. Like this character here, Dracula, for example.
This guy.
You could just go into his profile and look at all the different types of immortalities, all the regions, all the passives, and if you stuck him at infinite speed in his 2C scaling as he did, and you threw him up against most tier 2A versus with his list of resistances, even if he is both slower and weaker, you are going to have a hard time convincing most Castlevania scalers and most scalers with empirical evidence
I
of
think you have the most
assuming.
trouble convincing people in general that their character would lose.
Well, I know, I know. I'm saying like if we were to present all the evidence to the table for why a character would or would not win, you're going to have a very difficult time proving Dracula would lose just off of higher speed or higher AP
So like,
because he has so many things that you need to deal with to kill him. Even if he's just, even if you view him as a statue, that does not mean you get a win con.
yeah. So like an example, let's use Goku for example here. Let's say Goku's stronger than Dracula. Dracula has like what, 5 different immortalities or whatever.
5 to 10 different immortalities, and Goku can
So
blow up
yeah,
500 separated space time continuums, and he scales vastly above his power. He just
yes.
shoots a Kamehameha at him.
So Goku could kill Dracula, but then Dracula just comes back, or he just can't outright kill him because he has no
And
way to bypass the immortalities, and that's
he,
just
he,
immortality alone.
and even for Dracula, like a lot of Dracula's resistances are resistances to things that would get around his immortality. Like he has resistances to some power null or ceiling or
Yeah.
things like that, and he can resist things like his immortality or his region being negated, which are how you would kill him. So he gets to eliminate disadvantage for these things. Now I'm obviously not I'm not I'm not coming here to rep Dracula, although he has got some pretty cool abilities. I'm just using him as an example. I am using his profile with the sheer quantity of powers and abilities that he has as an example for why the AP speed argument does not work. And having like one or two gimmicky hacks does not work.
So just to offer a bit of a layman's example here, since they're all technically affecting the fourth dimension, regardless of affecting an infinite number of separate space times or not, they technically have like the same dimensional tier of power. If abilities exist that would vastly alter a standard fight and you have no way around them, you're not going to be able to do much regardless of how strong you are, depending on the character. There are certainly characters in tier 2 who don't have as many immortalities as someone like Dracula, like Bayonetta for example, who would get killed by like a 2A character punching them like once probably if you know they skill like
Sure.
that.
But so Bayonetta, I actually provide here as a different example. She's an example of a character that does not have too many immortalities or does not have too many regions. The reason I bring her up is specifically because she's a different type of character that you would use for her archetype as a fighter, for her fighting style, because she's a character that literally all she does is dodge. That is all she does is activate abilities and things that dodge or allow her to mitigate damage, like bats within, purgatory hopping, purgatory sniping, witch time, dodge offset, like all these things. And the reason I give this as an explanation is that if you put her in a matchup with even some 2A characters, a lot of 2B and a lot of 2C characters, if you could account for her speed, that she could make a lot of those fights inconclusive because they just wouldn't be able to hit her. They just would not be able to land a hit on her. Even if she couldn't win the matchup, just because like her general fighting style is that. It's not just like that she's fast enough to react, is that when you account for certain conditions, she is unable to be like put in disadvantage per se by a
Yes.
lot of characters. And this is just one example. I put Yuhan here, and yes, he does have a little bit of tier 2 scaling. Technically qualifies for Uni Plus,
Uh-huh.
technically.
Uh-huh.
I don't give a shit what VSB says.
The
Their argument
god, the God
for
Warriors
downgrading him is
about to
wrong.
come get you, being like, "How dare you give him tier
Yeah,
2 when he has no space
how dare
times?"
you? How dare you read Camp for Your Own World Volume 3 and not like contradict previous established positions? But, um, basically, Yuha has a similar situation with the Almighty and a lot of his like immortalities and physiologies, where he's just able to like rewrite certain things. Where like even if a character had resistance to the Almighty, he could use the Almighty on himself and give him more things and more powers and more abilities to mitigate disadvantages in the matchup. Oh, you're vastly stronger than me. Faster than me, great. Here's a future where I'm strong enough or fast enough to catch you for some fucking reason, or where for some reason you gave me power, or something else happened, or my backstory is different, or some stupid nonsense.
Yeah.
And
The-
like
Go
that's just one example of these things. He also has a lot of other things in his physiology to allow him to get past that. But like a lot of these characters, I would say, even like if you put in equalized matchups with a lot of characters in tier 2, they actually do very, very well because of these strengths that I mentioned. Um, the only reason they would get gate kept out of higher levels, because every example of the ones that I mentioned here for Dante, Yuha, Bayonetta, and Dracula, they're all given like 2C characters, but a lot of them are pretty hacksy. Bayonetta is the weakest among these, but these three of these examples
Yeah,
are
though.
very, 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 very hacksy characters
Yeah.
that
So
for most conditions generally win. And there's a lot of circumstances where I'd say these characters, even if they're infinitely slower than their opponents, can actually find ways to win because of passives, because their character just like the opponent just can't find a win con to kill the person.
so
And
yeah.
eventually they find a way to beat them.
So general idea here is even despite power, like massive power and speed stomps, because of powers and abilities, and because of certain passives, as Mingler mentioned, they would possess certain hacks abilities, they could potentially win matchups, or they could still square up to that level. Now,
Or
obviously,
yeah,
this. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that a lot of them have reactive evolution. So even if your tiers higher than them, they can eventually rise to your level mid combat. So
I'd say that's especially fair if we assume all these characters are starting at least in tier 2, but not to like go too far on that tangent. Obviously, we know this is for reference mainly with Devil May Cry, and we will be talking about that. But basically, that's a general idea. If you're in the same dimensional tier as if you're in tier 2, packs can actually change the outcome if it's just a straight up AP fight with someone like Goku, or for a more relevant
I,
example, someone like Kratos.
I also throw Doomslayer in there as well because a lot of
Boo!
these,
Shut up! No, bat!
I
Shut
a
up!
lot of these
Shut
examples,
up!
a lot of these examples come from these three characters in these verses, because a lot of their approaches to combat is I'm just stronger, I'm just faster, therefore I win, go burr. Like that's, and not to say these characters don't have hacks, some of them do, but their hacks and their resistance pages are not that good. Generally, their win cons are achieved through a couple hacks, mainly like one or two at best.
Boo.
Um,
Downplay. Wank.
and what I'm trying to say is that in tier 2 they are extremely out of place. Now, for I just put Final Fantasy and Megami Tensei here as examples for people if they want to go find like more information about what I'm talking about. But for tier 1, this does not work. So everything that I mentioned about like how hard it is to get into like some of the higher tiers, like beating some of these characters with all these like immortalities, their regions, so on and so forth. Whatever I apply to 2A, double or triple that to like 5D characters or characters that are like 60. You do not get to just walk in there with one good hacks and like immeasurable speed and live. That does not work. Most of these characters have those things by default, and they will literally fuck your shit up just for like existing. Most of them generally have a very, very large reservoir of hacks abilities, and most of their victories come from a combination of physiology and hacks abilities. So,
All right.
is there anything you'd like to add, Zim, before we move on to section 4?
No, just to be clear, I'm technically the hack should apply cross. Like it potentially can apply cross dimensionality wise. Like if a fifth dimensional character tries to kill a fourth dimensional, you could argue the immortalities are still valid at that point. I don't know if that's fair game, but that is an argument.
In their dimension without retaining their power, perhaps.
I
But
was
if they're
gonna,
just destroying the construct.
yeah, because I was gonna say like, because technically like when you go higher dimensionality, you're supposed to be like, infinitely superior to whatever came before. So it's like
Whatever exists within that reality, essentially.
yeah, kind of the same way we look at like a picture versus like us in real life, for example. So that's where I'm kind of a little iffy on. I know that some people might say it does work that way. I'm just personally iffy on that. But for the tier 2, like just tier 2 and in the respective dimensional tiers, that seems fine to me. The logic that Mangler presents seems fine. Unless you can demonstrate your character through sheer AP can just resist other hacks, but even then that's kind of wonky depending on the series. So
Yeah.
now it's time to go through the more extensive part. So let me explain this one a little bit, because this might seem, with everything we've said, that might be well said and done. But they went after DMC2. And there's no other way to put this. I was personally a little fucking annoyed by a lot of the dismissive comments regarding DMC2, especially in the like, because DMC2 takes place in the middle of the fucking story, and ironically enough, this is where you can make arguments, even if you give Kratos his best scaling they give him, which generally on the other side of what God of War scalers is 2A, based off the Yggdrasil and the well of fucking timelines from the card game. If I'm wrong, please correct me in the comments. And immeasurable speed.
Which we have here under...
and then 5D for Power of Hope, and potentially Blade of Olympus, and whatever the fuck you want to say for Athena. 5D. By the time we get DMC2, that's where that doesn't... That's not very impressive anymore.
So, generally speaking, like, I'm just going to say, like, as far as, like, the timelines and stuff, I'm not here to explain, like, my position or my opinion on that. We're just explaining, like, we're giving Kratos, like, their scaling as he exists. So 2A AP,
yes,
and a measurable speed, and then like a 5D version with a measurable speed.
That is two from what I've heard and from what I've discussed, that seems to be the general consensus of where Kratos is scaled by most people who scale Kratos these days. If I'm wrong, again, please feel free to comment down below.
Yes. So now we go through DMC's games without POC. So this is just basically, we just end up explaining what the specific things that Kratos is going to have to deal with on his journey.
Yes, because as well, we're not going to be giving concessions, and we're not going to be giving Kratos multiple lives either, but unfortunately, there are a lot of scans here explaining quite a few things regarding just demons in general. So go ahead, Encyclopedia.
A lot of the side effects, demonic power, and I mean this, like, just demonic energy in general of demons, like, just being around their presences causes you to experience, whether in the human world or in the demon world, causes you to experience a lot of side effects. So for starters, you can just you have like statistics reduction typically. So a lot of these things even happen to like Dante, for example, when he's like earlier in one's novel, where he can experience like dizziness and nausea when he becomes ensnared in the basically like the demonic reality, the Nexus, and stuff like that. And generally, this also applies to like anytime the demon world applies or exists. This also applies to like that existence as well. So you can suffer being made weaker. You can like fall asleep. You can have your stamina reduced pretty heavily. It's directly stated in Dante's fight with Gilvard that this happens to him.
Yeah, right here. Grew weaker with each passing moment.
Yeah. And then when we go down the scans, I would like to point out, because some people are under the impression when going through DMC that for some reason, I know why this came about. It came from VSB, and I know who produced it. That the demon world produces a different set of energy than the demonic energy that exists within demons' bodies. This is false. It is the same energy. It is simply of a larger quantity. And whether or not it is produced by demons depends entirely on whether or not you come into contact with long enough. It's not just the volume. As Dante does confirm that the energy that he has, the magical energy that he exists, is referred to as his links to the demon world.
Unfortunately,
there's also other statements later on that we'll get to that will explain this.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Another thing that
I'll say, unfortunately, at this point, we are getting some scans that just aren't working. The DMC2 novel scans at the start here don't, for some reason, they're not loading, and we do have two scans that already messed up. So if you want to screen share real quickly or something like that to show those.
Let me open that one.
Yeah. So once we get through Mangler's entire encyclopedia here of shit demons in general do, we'll briefly go over. All right. With that in mind, Kratos goes through DMC3. the ones that we currently like made him go through.
Yes.
All right, there we go.
Can you see?
Yeah.
So it says Dante could feel the effect of the enchanted bullets. He was imbued with a degree of magical energy from his links to the demon world.
Yeah.
Although if he wouldn't die if it vanished. He'd certainly find it difficult to display the superhuman fighting abilities for which he was famous for if he ever lost that connection.
Yeah. So there's a weakness for Dante there, but so are the next two the other two that are missing?
Which ones are you referring to?
Well, it's well, I mean, like, so I'm over
I don't
here.
think I.
Oh, hang on. Where is it?
Hang on a sec. I have to go back into the chat.
Yeah. So first one doesn't. First one, the DMC1 novel scans all work fine. It's the one right after the one that shows the Force Edge, where it says, "But there was something more. A dark and natural presence tinkled in the system." That one right afterwards doesn't work. The DMC2 novel scan there doesn't work either. Again, the DMC1 novel scan seems to be working fine for some reason.
And so it's just the DMC2 novel scans then?
Yeah, and then the one after the DMC2 novel scan at the 9:10
Let me go open all of them then.
All right.
Because for some reason, all of them are failing to load.
Yeah, so
That's
just the DMC1 scan seem to be working just fine for now. Art book seems to work fine. So yeah, if those are relevant, like let me know when you want to show them.
Yeah, all of them are relevant. One of them is failing to load as well.
Yeah.
But basically, let me share the screen.
I'm sure the amount of evidence would already show that we're kind of like credible on what we're saying, but just in case.
Oh no, they're about to get more. So basically, where is it? Is it this one? Yeah. So, this is just basically explaining that the magic energy that underpins the geography of the demon world, it's essentially the like what it exists as is essentially the same as what Dante's referring to here. It's like the magical energy that exists in the demon world is the same one that underpins its geography, and that exists inside of his body and all the bodies of other demons. Though that's later confirmed in Agnes's actual fight, because when Agnes is fighting Dante in Deadly Fortune for his DMC4 during mission 17, I believe, after he absorbs a bunch of demonic energy during the fight, he actually absorbs a lot of his demons. And it specifically is confirmed that the fish demons, the basilisk, and the cutlace are sucked away by his energy, and they collapse to the ground and melt away. So their bodies are completely and totally made up of demonic energy. We also have additional statements from Chen, I believe, where he says that after he catches Dante in the traps to nullify his magic energy, that he specifically spent this time years developing and examining demons to nullify their magic powers. Which again, he wouldn't have to nullify those magic powers if those powers didn't exist inside of their bodies already. So I think it's pretty clear at this point that magical energy does exist inside of their body. And then it makes up their abilities and powers.
Yeah.
This is another scan that's not going to load later on, but it basically explains that just being in the environment of this demonic energy drives you insane. So being in the presence of demonic energy will cause humans to just basically demons will experience it as a sixth sense. So not only do they not experience the fear, they actually are enhanced by it, and it's a boon that enhances their senses that allows them to perceive more things in their environment. Humans don't experience a positive. In fact, they only experience usually like insanity, or the dread also weakens like their stamina because it causes them to collapse later. And this does also happen to Beryl at a later time as well. Which I believe there is a scan in here. Oh yes, that one wouldn't load because of course it won't.
Oh, I'll say, do you want to pull it up real quickly then?
I'm trying to.
All right, I'm back over here. Protagonist swaps.
Yeah, it can't load. But
all right, yeah,
I can read it out. So
well,
what it says.
No, it's here. Let me stop watching your stream for now. No, yeah, no, like it's fine. Yeah, she does experience side effects from it. That's fine.
Basically, like further into the demon world she goes, even though she has resistances to the powers in question due to the beast head's mark on her skin, because she's able to experience demonic energy being poured into her body, she eventually succumbs to the force of it when it's put in like great enough levels. So even like higher levels of it can result in her collapsing. So
Yes.
another thing I would like to mention was Gru's experiences involving this. So fear manipulation is a very prominent thing among demons. So just being in the presence of a demon will cause you insatiable fear. And Gru is also stated to be he's essentially he said that he's seen too many horrors in his career to be encountered or unfazed by anything. But when he sees a demon possessing a corpse of a body, he basically is completely frozen in shock. He is unable to move his body, and he is unable to do anything at all. He's completely fixated to the position and is immobile.
Yes.
Later on, I like to point out that like demons and Gilver also points out that like the demons themselves are also amped by the power of despair. So not only do they love this, they not only do they experience this passively. Whenever you experience despair, they become stronger as a result of that.
I don't think you have that scan here specifically.
It's later
Oh,
down.
okay. All right, that's
Uh,
fine.
I put some of these in like the wrong order. There's also statements that the dark unnatural presence along Tony's nervous system, the rotten atmosphere, had no unearthly origin. This is referring to the demonic world in general. That just the demon world showing up also causes like an atmosphere that is not native to the world,
Yes.
where you generally can't survive. There's similar statements for this involving the tree that shows up as well.
A tree, you say?
Yes. Not that tree, the other tree that never gets a name and is never referenced or acknowledged ever again in the series.
Doesn't need to be got replaced. Yeah, so Dante over here getting drained. Dante being affected by the demon world, demonic energy. To be fair, I believe, yeah, this is actually Dante with his name at this point. So
Yeah, this is also the Nexus. Like he does get greater resistance to it, but I'm saying like even the demon world is able to affect people like Dante who have an established resistance to it and get back most of their powers and abilities. It can eventually weaken him and affect him over time. And this also isn't like even the strongest area within the demon world. This is like just the Nexus. Then we get to some of the meta statements. So the Misra and examples of the Reapers are ones that I'd like to provide. The Misra in DMC2 are actually just humans that breathed in demonic air during ancient times, and they were immediately transformed into demons. So their bodies and their souls and everything about their existence just became a demon, just
yeah.
because they breathed in the atmosphere of the demon world. So, like, the demon world also has examples with arachnids descriptions, where it basically says that touching the outer edge of it transforms a human soul into a demon.
Yes.
We have, well, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying yes because I'm showing like the scan in response.
We have statements for the art designer that basically, like, he says specifically, we deal with this problem every day, but when demons are fighting in the streets, ordinary people die, right? So it's natural to ask what happens to them. In Devil May Cry 2, we had them turn into Misra, but when it came to time to decide things for Devil May Cry 3, I wanted them to turn into things that still resembled humans as opposed to grotesque monsters. So they're basically designed to look like Reapers. If people were shown running from these guys in the game, that would present a completely different image. Maybe I'm just making excuses, though. So he essentially confirms, and this is also obviously a phenomenon that a lot of DMC power skills kind of already know about. But when you die in DMC, you just go to the demon world and you transform into a demon the moment you make contact with the demon world. You just become a demon.
I'm sure there are some humans around there, but like most people just end up becoming it.
If they're strong enough to survive, but the vast majority, like 99.9% of them,
we have
most of the devil hunters.
Yeah, we haven't run into a human who could resist it, but
we've never run into a human that has died and their soul has gone to the demon world and they've retained their humanity. The only ones that have done this are like hybrids who already had like part demonic like nature or things like that, or already had the energy system of DMC. And then going further, we have statements from Lucia's descriptions in the DMC2 guidebook, which confirms that evil corrupts the soul and fills the air with an acidic taste. So again, the demon world can just corrupt the soil and the environment itself and fill the air with acid, which again can cause things like the Misra to occur. The demon world can also stop time and loop it into infinite circles and warp people's minds.
Yes.
So drive them mad and insane and drive them into circles of infinite confusion, essentially. Then later on, we have. I would like to point out that this example is not. It's not just native to like people who have like no experiences with this. Like, keep in mind, like demonic energy in high enough quantities can also cause these effects to people that have resistances to these powers. So, Deadly Fortune, for example, Sanctius basically when he's talking with Agnes, when he approaches Agnes, when they're inside the Savior, Agnes collapses to his feet, and he basically realizes that when Sanctius puts his hands on his shoulder, that it's because of the power, the incredible demonic power that he radiated, and it had instantly subdued Agnes's own. That just like the sheer amount of power that he's provided causes fear manipulation, even though Agnes scales well above lesser demons. He can literally create them with his powers and is unaffected by their powers, and in some cases even amped by them. But just being around Sanctius results in him collapsing.
Yes.
And similar situations happen in the alternate timeline where the generals eventually collapse on their way to Void Mundus's palace because the sheer amount of power coming out of the Nexus in that timeline is just crushing them.
Yes, that one did load, so that's fine.
Yes. Then there's also examples that demonic energy in general, demon world, can transmutate people like it does Jessica in the DMC1 novel. It turns her into a tree, essentially. Yep. Also, damaging demons in any capacity, if it results in blood being exhumed from their body, you can also be poisoned on contact. Because their blood is also poisonous.
Yeah, and that's incredibly like painful, as it says right here. No human has ever endured the anguish she is experiencing now.
Okay. Now there is one here that is
the next one.
Oh, those two skins were the ones I showed earlier.
Okay, so we can just skip the next 6 because the next 6 aren't loading.
Are you referring to the Beast Heads one?
So yes, the Beast Heads ones presumably aren't loading, but I've shown the Beast Heads I think enough times here. But if you want to just show like
the example that I was trying to provide is that this is all more information that basically is stated by Chen and whatnot and what have you. I'll open them up in my some of them aren't loading, but basically Chen states that when after he's like caught Dante, what he specifically says is ho, a fascinating conclusion. I should patent this, a process for transforming humans into a basic magical energy. And this is the description that he also gives to the Beast Heads, which he says that it eats humans and replenishes you demons. It's like a power transformer for souls. Which that is intended to mean, once again, that the magical energy that exists within, that basically exists within demons is exactly the same magical energy that's being provided by the demon world. It's exactly the same thing. I'm just providing like more and more evidence that I can. And then there's more statements for Agnes as well that basically equates to this. And then
well, I was gonna say like there was a scan that fear empowers demons, right? Like
yes,
I don't think
there is a scan. I can get that. Sure.
I'll say if you wanna get that before we're done with this video for sure though.
Oh sure.
Yeah, because over here we just have the same Agnu scan of him collapsing his feet with Sanctius, and then we have the same repeat of the Mundus party as the last 2 scans.
Unfortunately, the examples of what's it called? The examples that are provided by my Discord are not loading all the time, but I'll put them in this extra chat in the recording example right here.
All right,
so this is the one that Dante experiences when he gets back his name, essentially. And Gilver says similar things where he says like, what delicious despair, and he essentially talks about it, but it's stated that the demons that essentially are affected by despair, that essentially dine on despair, begin to feel despair themselves, because Dante is able to cause like fear manipulation to demons that are unaffected by fear manipulation.
Yes,
they actually state similar things, that despair itself is a human emotion. It's not something demons don't experience it, not because they don't want to, but because they can't. Like Dante has to actually give them fear because they've never experienced it before. Like they're unaffected by it and they're actually amped by it. So it causes the opposite effect.
Yes.
My comparison.
And regarding the beast heads, they even make inanimate objects feel fear, so they can literally just like they can make everything feel fear.
Even things that aren't alive.
Yeah, like the I think it's like the walls of the building are quaking in fear, and like even the planet,
Yes.
like the ocean shuts up despite hitting rocks because it's afraid of the beast heads.
Yes, it starts like certain things in reality start to disobey the laws of physics because they're experiencing emotions despite not having sentience. So,
Yes.
like, we're talking about things that defy logic
Yes.
on like a practical level.
So demons, especially of a higher level, can just make you feel fear, even if you resist it, as shown with the demons who would already resist it. Because by the time Agnus talks to Sanctius, he's already gone through the Ascension ceremony and he already has a demonic form of his own.
This is also after the Hellgate is opened, so he's been massively amped and he's been absorbing demonic energy. So he's the strongest he's ever been, and he takes one look at Sanctius and collapses to his feet when Sanctius is on the other side of the room. And Sanctius is like, "What's wrong, Agnes?" And just walks over there and he's like, "Oh, it's because you're so powerful." You know, like that's a very tough situation to be in, hacks wise. Now, the point of explaining that is that this is some of the examples of what like demons can do to you, and there are a couple scans that I did miss that'll be provided later. But now I'm actually going to explain the demonic power mechanics. So anyone who's been on this channel knows that I love to explain how subjective reality is the main mechanic by which demons produce their powers, aka self-actualization. So demons basically, this first scan is just basically about like human blood providing like demonic power and stuff like that. But basically, demons can get blood from consuming demonic power, and one of the main things that they can do is that they have pain empowerment. So anytime that you inflict pain on a demon, anytime you inflict a strike or damage or anything that is perceived by the demon to be damage, they will gain power. If they inflict damage on you, they will also gain power. If both of these things will happen, they will gain 2 levels of power simultaneously.
Or they'll get power from 2 different sources.
So yeah, that's kind of what I meant. Like they'll be gaining power from 2 different sources. And then later we have statements from Nico and Agnes in both of their respective games that confirm that demons can manifest their powers based on, like, they mutate based on their deepest, darkest desires.
Yes.
It is pointing. Some people have tried to say that this takes like a while because she says a few generations. I'd like to point out that technically speaking, since demons don't actually live that long, since they're constantly fighting and killing each other, this actually wouldn't be a very long time at all. This wouldn't take like years or anything. Also, demons. A generation for a demon wouldn't even need to produce offspring because a demon would have several lives since they fight and kill each other and respawn in the demon world. Because if you're a demon in DMC, you like when you die, you just go back to the demon world. So this would just be a demon that is just self-actualizing on its second life. Similar things happen with the Lucicia. We also have additional statements with the Ascension ceremony that confirms the Ascension ceremony, which is just a process by which demonic power is shoehorned into a person's body by force. If they accept it, they manifest and present a power consistent with their personality and their inner subconscious desires. So it is stated to be shaped by their own spirits, and shaped to their subconscious desires. It even determines the way that they die.
Oh yeah,
according to I was gonna say, according to Dante, basically Credo dies how an illusion fades, by vanishing faintly in the cloud of white light. Surely this is how angels died. Others who gained the same demonic power often didn't meet such a pretty looking end. Or rather, it must have been how Credo envisioned it, because it too had been shaped by his expectations, much like his demonic shape was, or at least that was Dante's theory. And keep in mind, Dante never received the explanation for the Ascension ceremony, and he came to the exact same conclusion that Agnes brought.
Yes.
And then, there's just statements that explain how the Ascension ceremony works further down there. And then finally, Agnes does state to Nero in the novel that he specifically believes that holiness has been reborn as an angel. And he says, an angel? And he says, yes, indeed. If someone with a righteous mind and pure spirit were to gain demonic power, the result would not be demonic in power, demonic in nature, but angelic. Meaning most angelic looking and holy based demons are just demons that have self-actualized themselves to have holy powers. So their energy systems, things about their bodies and things can completely change based on what they want. And it can be from moment to moment to moment over a longer period of time. Okay.
All right. So that's how self-actualization works, and that's how. So the pain that they receive and the pain they inflict, as far as we know, it's just equal to the damage dealt, damage received, and what they gain in strength. There's no statement saying it's different from what they're directly receiving. Just to clarify, unfortunately, you can't really zoom in on this one, but it's right there in the DMC1 guidebook, and there's a second source confirming this in the DMC2 guidebook as well. Beyond that, again, the self-actualization is pretty straightforward. Human blood being the source of demonic power, pretty straightforward. Just a general understanding. Nothing too crazy here.
If you want an exact statement for what it says, in the underworld, power is equivalent to the pain you inflict or the pain you receive. And then the second statement specifically says, pain is the imminent principle of hell. So for every point of damage Dante inflicts or sustains, his devil trigger gauges are filled just a little bit. The statements are referring to gameplay in some capacity, but that's also a lore description because it prefaces it by saying in the underworld and is the imminent principle of hell.
Yeah, and the first one's a lot more lore based, and the underworld power is equivalent to the pain you inflict or the pain you receive. So again, so equivalent means equal. So pain, damage, etc. In this case, it'd essentially be, one and the same, although it's not always technically one and the same. And I'm sure there are arguments you can make where it wouldn't apply exactly, but in this particular situation, it should be fine.
Well, the point I'm trying to make is that it can be problematically wrong, but we'll get to that once we get past the regeneration and some conceptual stuff. So,
yes. So just to be clear, this is for every demon we see in their true form in DMC.
This is also for every. Well, actually, this is for every demon, regardless, because technically speaking, their consciousness is still active, and these are powers that govern like their soul as a whole. So this isn't just related to their things. Like the effects are just simply increased massively when they're in their true forms. So like,
well, we'll talk a little more about that when we get to like the actual ending portion here. Since that seems like something that should go.
Yeah, I would also like to point out that this applies to an extent to the immortalities, though it's just more accurate later on. But basically, we get statements in Visions of V and to his novel that essentially Griffin confirms that V's not a demon anymore, that if he gets shot, he's dead, which basically indicates that like he could normally survive a wound that would be lethal, which is a gunshot to the head, like a major organ of his body just being pressured or like punctured completely, and it would not, like, he would just not die. We have similar examples with the Impuzas as well, where they're being shredded like a bunch of mincemeat and they're technically still alive
until V stabs them with his magic cane.
Yeah, like you can clearly tell this is beyond like mid levels of like what regeneration would be capable of doing, and they're technically still alive, so they all qualify for resilient immortality because they can't die to conventional wounds. There's also statements in Two's novel as well. I don't know if these are loading for you. Let me know.
I gotta go back down. Unfortunately, there's a little bar that says you're doing older messages, and send me all the way to the end.
Oh yeah.
Damn you, Discord. All right, is this here we go. Explain the immortalities. Yeah. So burial, first one, loading just fine.
Yep.
Demon healing up, or after being its flesh blown off with burials.
She basically blows off a demon's wings, and this demon heals them like instantaneously. So this is just an example of immortality through regeneration, something that a lot of demons have. Actually, technically most demons have, because we also have statements for this for Agnes, that any demon that can become, most demons are able to become devil arms. And most demons that become devil arms have great regenerative capabilities as well. And then
Here's Dante canceling out the healing factor in order to actually like kill the thing.
Oh yes, I was also gonna say, Gilver also points out that basically inhabiting the corpses of these bodies taxes our strength and our numbers, but soon we'll be able to migrate to the plane in our own prepared bodies, indicating that demons also have parasitic immortality. The bodies that they actually take to the that you see in the games are not really their true forms and bodies. Those are fake bodies that they prepare in the demon world, or that they prepare using materials in the human world. Um, and Lady also confirms this as well, that there are such things as nebulous, intangible demons made purely of energy that in the human world had no corporeal form. When those entities somehow managed to enter the human world, it would be through attaching themselves to other matter as a substitute for a physical body, like example, old dolls or tortural instruments, seeing as those types of demons feed on strong human emotions, or sand, or like a doll, or something else.
Yeah.
Um,
Or dust.
yeah, or dust. Lucia also confirms that when they say demon, or at least the narrator in Lucia's chapter for Before the Nightmare says, when they say demons, they're referring to many different types of evil spirits. So all the sorcerers, the lizards, all the demons that you see, they're all just like abstractions. They don't have like an actual physical state in reality. Like they have bodies based on other things, and we'll get to that, but like those are bodies that they make with materials, including the ones in the demon world. So they're actually mostly just abstract beings, technically. Like what you see through the parasitic immortality is just one way that they're able to interact with like the plane. Because it's obviously far more effective to torture, hunt, and kill people with their own body than it is to just haunt them. Not that they couldn't do that, because demons have done that as well. And then Dante's statement for the devil trigger thing is just an example, like it's referred to as the full demon killing package. Like it's literally just his demonic power manifested over his body results in him having a greater healing factor. The statements about that I mentioned before about them becoming reapers, that's just proof that they also have undead immortality. So they are technically, by virtue of already being dead, they qualify for another level of immortality. And via the Soul Eaters, which are just remnants of the rage of murdered demons, demons also qualify for having resurrective immortality, because technically they're able to come back to life, or what the demons consider to be coming back to life, by regenerating from their body, mind, and soul being destroyed.
Yeah, and then also they can regenerate from their souls or mind. So minds if it's not their true form, and then if they get destroyed in the true form, usually souls, unless they can
Yeah.
put on their soul.
We usually say the soul thing because most of the battle that happens among demons is happening in the demon world, and they usually send their consciousness to the human world. Thus, that gets into the regeneration. So I'd like to point out everything I just said. So immortalities, well, technically they also have eternal life, but that's not relevant to the combat situation unless you have like age manipulation. But that's not applicable to Kratos.
The amulet of Ouroboros, or
that is Ascension Kratos. But basically, so we have types 2, 3. If you want to go by like, I use VSBs for the categorization, but that's types 2, 3, 4, 6, and 7. So they're dead. They can inhabit new bodies. They can resurrect. They can regenerate indefinitely, and they can't die to conventional wounds. So I want to point out every single lesser demon in the series has these immortalities.
Yes.
All of them. And all of the mechanics we just mentioned governing demonic power and all the side effects.
Yes.
Now we will get into their regeneration. So, as you're fully aware that we just mentioned this, they're able to create bodies from basically nothing. The descriptions of Greed and descriptions from 3's manga confirm that they can make them from dust, basically like brand new bodies from essentially nothing. That is technically on the level of regen, that's actually a low godly regen feed, because they're regenerating and making an entirely new body just from their disassembled consciousness. And this is confirmed by Montier as well, that generally due to the barriers between the worlds, the gaps and holes between the barriers aren't big enough, so when small demons get through, they can only send their consciousness. They cannot bring their full bodies because the holes aren't big enough. It's too much power, essentially. and they can't step over in their true forms. Yes. And the hole has to be really big and stable. And as it says, such holes don't randomly appear. And then we have examples of the Soul Eaters, which, as I've said before, the Soul Eaters are what I would qualify as an example for mid-godly region. Because demons, by virtue of having the same demonic energy as the demon world, amongst several other powers, are capable of affecting souls with their attacks. No specific attacks, by the way. Just most of their attacks can generally affect and destroy the soul in the body.
Like, literally, the jailers from DMC3 are referred to as people who torture souls in the afterlife in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so there are some of them that aren't exactly transformed just for the purposes of being tortured when they get to the demon world, which is kind of fucked up, but, you know, par for the course in DMC. Basically, because of this, we have examples of Soul Eaters, which are just demons that have just like several demons that have been destroyed completely with their bodies and their souls, and they have come back from this. So we do have like borderline existence erasure regeneration for many demons, and this is something that is a canon thing that can happen for demons.
Yeah. And then more demonic side effect.
Yeah, there were a couple of things that I missed that I mentioned earlier. So there were two things. So technically, sleep manipulation, kind of a weird thing. So Kyrie suffers this a little bit when Agnes transforms after the Kratos fight, and Dante experiences this when he goes to the forest. That basically enough demonic energy in a given area can cause someone to pass out, or go unconscious, or go to sleep, because it's just too much for it's sensory overload essentially. Like, it just hits them like that, and they're just like, oh, I got to take some Z's.
Yes.
So that's just something that demonic energy can do, and the demon world can very much do, because the example that I'm being provided here is what happens when, like, the Hellgate's been opened and the forest itself is being provided. So if you had a strong enough demon, they could potentially do this without having to open up the Hellgate, if they just revved up enough power. So, I said this clear. I'm not going to explain every fucking resistance that demons have, or we would literally be here. We're already going to be here for a really long time.
We're already an hour and 26 minutes in.
I'm only explaining the resistances that are relevant to this scenario.
Okay.
But I am going to mention a causality to an extent, because that is relevant.
Why don't you just want me to stab you?
Basically, demons are not affected by any rules or laws that govern reality as a whole. So space, time, most things involving like the laws of physics, well, actually just all laws of physics in general, they don't apply to demons. Like, they just live in the demon world, which follows completely different laws. When the beast head shows up, it's literally referred to as a dimension that's anthema to their own. That essentially, as Zim mentioned before, it's able to cause things within the rules of reality that completely defy logic. The ocean can get like emotions and things like this. It can create like soundless sounds. There's statements of like the heatless flame, which is literally like contradictory to the logic of how fire works. They can also completely walk through the demon world, marching into the human world, causing time to stop. That doesn't do anything to demons. They're not affected at all. They also are not affected at all by the demon world fusing the human world. So like, as it's warping it, they're not suffering. They're not being absorbed into the demon world directly. It doesn't affect them.
Oh, right.
And the last two ones that I felt that I needed to mention, obviously, is the obvious thing that demons are not at their fullest strength. So everything that you're seeing here is applicable to demons without their true forms. They don't have their full bodies, and this is not like the full power of their souls either. These are just what demons... Okay.
This is kind of like in the protagonist swaps, because again, we're going to talk about this with everything we've mentioned here, which aren't usually talked about or considered for the regular ones, but that's kind of why when the demon world opens, it's kind of when it's like game over for Kratos.
And a lot of people in that scenario in general, and this is why we pointed out the different edits levels, because if I had to mention this every time we did a protagonist swap, every protagonist swap like would be like 3 hours long.
Yes.
It would be insanely long, and that would take an insane length of time and scans and information for every single video just to appease what should have been a fun little scenario. turns into like a 3 hour
As you're literally seeing now.
Yeah, no, as you're literally seeing now. This is what happens when you guys force me to show my scans. Like, we're just here for, like, story time forever. And you don't get to leave.
By you guys, he means me.
Yeah, this is good. I just get to torture him. So, explain the conceptual powers of demons. So, obviously, we have we go into concepts and conceptual manipulation demons. We have to mention the manga scans that explain that basically the names are essentially truth to demons. They are their power, the very fabric of the demon, the mold of the demon itself, essentially what molds their existence into play. It governs their powers and everything. So since it is the idea, it is truth to them, it is essentially the mold of this, it would be their concept. And we can also mention this in line with Mathieu's statements that confirm that for demons that can become devil arms, the devil arm is specifically referred to as the pure embodiment of the demon itself. And that is the soul, which technically speaking, because devil arms are made from the soul, technically speaking, that would be included within the name. So for something to be lesser than the name to be referred to as the pure embodiment of the demon, and it can contain their consciousness and their body, that would mean that the name is able to create a container and a fabric for something that is considered the pure embodiment. So it is higher than that on the scale. Hence is why I say it's conceptual as well, because it also governs like all things and all aspects of their existence. Now, some people have been under the impression that this is technically only type 3, that it's only a concept to like an interpersonal level. That's not actually true. What we find out in 3's manga is technically that when Mundus basically governs the power over the demons, like when he gets power, or like when he takes over the devil throne specifically and he becomes the demon king, as soon as he loses, his entire army loses all of its power as well. And that's as a direct result of this. And keep in mind, like, when he declares himself emperor of the demon world, he's technically declaring himself as Emperor Mundus, which is an extension of his name. So we can argue, given that and his creation feats, the fact that he can create demons, give them names, he can choose not to give them names and manipulate them on the conceptual level. So he can give names to people like Virgil, who can already manipulate and give names to other demons. He can choose not to give names to things like nobodies, leaving them without a source of power or existence. He just declares himself emperor of the demon world. And then he has additional statements later on that confirm he has like rules over all the dark powers and whatnot. We'll get to that one later, but the reason why I'm trying to explain how this ties into conceptual powers is that this technically is governing all reality, because at that point you're affecting all demons. You're not affecting like just one demon on a personal level. And him losing affected all of his forces directly.
So then Argosax just came in and sweeped.
Argosax came in and stole his property. So the reason I'm trying to explain how this applies is that, technically speaking, demons actually qualify for type 1 conceptual manipulation without the usage of Pinnacle of Combat's scans, because all of their stuff about acausality and being independent from the human world and the demon world, that applied prior to that information, because demons precede the human world as a whole. Like their energy and the things within their bodies predate the existence of the human world as a whole, because that energy, as established by 3's manga scan here, like the unending darkness, the crucible of chaos that makes up the primordial existence at the beginning of DMC, that just becomes the demon world. It just says the darkness becomes the demon world. And that energy that underpins the geography comes from the darkness of the demon world. That's all. Like, all of that information is just like layered into itself through various portions of source material. So like the demons can literally suffer in side effects of things that on a realm and a reality that predate the human world completely. They're abstractions. They exist independent from reality. The names that govern their things are concepts. So I would argue being able to govern the demon world or any demons as a whole would be you be manipulating concepts that are completely independent of reality on not just a universal scale, but technically the demon world is arguably higher. You can participate in essentially whatever reality you want, because even the most basic demons don't abide by any rules in the demon world. And the demon world is not even reality. The human world is reality in DMC. The demon world is the higher reality. So they actually would only need to participate in the first one, but being independent of the second one for sure qualifies for them for this. That's without mentioning that Mundus just has a direct statement that when he eats the fruit, he gains sovereign power to rule over all. That power, as confirmed by the fruit, is the very embodiment of power. So it literally created the basis of how demonic power works and governs it for demons. So now we get into the actual fruit portion. And
there
explaining...
are 4 scans that aren't here, but they can just go watch the fruit video for an explanation.
I mean, if you want me to share my screen... Oh, wait, no, it doesn't work. I will literally just explain it here.
There are literally, either watch this portion, or you could just watch the video I already have up on the channel that talks about how the fruit sees reality and everything. Very easy, very easy.
Basically, Urizen, when he goes to the mission 17 at the end of DMC 5, when Dante recalls the story of their mother dying, he basically says, "I have no longer interested in that tale or this place. Everything is an illusion created by the fruit arbitrarily." And then he eats the fruit, his armor disappears, shatters like glass as an illusion, and he says, "With this, I will have everything." So he basically shatters a construct that, being the fruit armor, that scales to Cindy T. Dante, who scales vastly above everything in the entire cosmology. And the fruit sees that armor with all of those feats as an illusion, despite the fact that that armor would shit stomp the demon world, which views the human world as insignificant by comparison. So you're kind of seeing like where I go with this, like that if the fruit is stated to be able to make the very embodiment of power, like as far as like the tiering system goes, it is very clearly superior. There's a very clear relationship of superiority among itself. It's also like fun little fact I thought I'd throw in there. Mundus's name is also translates to Vile World or Imagine Universe, the same thing that the fruit views the cosmology as, which is an illusion. So now we get into the higher dimensionality. Also, everything I said, with the exception of the fruit, applies to all demons mentioned there.
Yes.
So you're kind of seeing where this is going. So the higher dimensionality, this is pretty simple. So the demon world can show up, just stroll into the human world and cause time and space as a whole to collapse.
I'm sorry, I can't zoom in, but we've shown this scan repeatedly elsewhere. It is there in DMC2's guidebook. Very easy
Mission 14, if you want to go look at it. Yes, we're sourcing where it is. Basically, the point is that it can cause casual 4D feats. And keep in mind, like, even though the human world is typically like a 3-dimensional space, there is a space-time continuum attached to the human world, obviously governs this time and space.
There's
any time-space fabric and barrier around the human world that prevents the demon world from getting into it. And the demon world has bypassed this multiple times, or has been let in by people in multiple times, and has absorbed and broken down this barrier several times. So it has very, very casual 4D feats just by moving. Arius already says that basically the world is already warped. Everything that belongs to the demons will eventually revert to its original form. We have extended statements about greater demons like Gigapede and Orangatara that, similar to the statements I mentioned about humans' consciousness moving, and Phantom also falls into this category, that demons, when they get higher in power, they require huge gaps to get through this time-space barrier, and they literally need like a 4D time-space jump to get there, because their power is like too great. They literally like need like a higher dimensional like opening to get through. Even Phantom, in the examples that are presented here from Kaizo Shinto's novel, has to push the boundary between the human world and the demon world when he goes to Malay Island. He has to go to areas where the boundary is specifically weakest. And there's additional statements here that said that they're essentially like nets. High-ranking demons can't go to the world unless favorable conditions have been met due to this, but low-ranking demons are easily able to pass through the net. So, and then additional statements about, Sparta sealing the realms. Yamato is the sword that's used to separate the realms. Yamato, as you know, consistent statements, cuts through the fabric of space and time. Pretty consistent 4D stuff.
Yeah. Really, really easy to understand. Not too crazy here.
Okay,
Got some repeat
so
scans going on, I see.
now I would like to point out that in addition to this, we have statements that refer to the demon world and the human world as the upper and the lower realms. Um, Mundus specifically says, like, after he declared himself emperor of the demon world, that his next feat was an invasion of the human world. His plan was to conquer it and rule over both the lower and the upper realms. Given the sentence structure, the lower realm would be referring to the human world, as he just mentioned that, and the upper realm would be referring to the demon world in this case. Not to mention, the demon world has superior feats between the two of them. So, if we go by the statements and especially the statements giving like Three's manga that establishes that like the demon world visually and by comparison is endless in size compared to the size of the human world as a 4D construct, that its relationship is not only superior, because as Three's manga also shows here, that when Mundus tries to invade, the demon world can casually and easily consume the human world with no effort whatsoever. It's infinite in size and comparisons, thus is infinitely superior. It's referred to as an upper realm. It can break the space-time barriers casually. It has statements of there being not only different flows of time, but literal space-time continuums inside of it with the Samsara.
Oh, okay. So the next 3 scans below the DMC1 novel scan or fucking player manual is not loading. I'm assuming the Samsara is one of these 3.
Yeah, I'm gonna share screen.
All right.
That's fucking ridiculous. There we go.
All right, so that everything after that one isn't like the 3 after that one aren't loading. That one's loading.
Yeah. So this is the statement I'm referring to.
Plan was to conquer the rule both of the lower and upper realms.
Yep. So I was just gonna say all the Samsara ones loading.
No, the 3 Samsara ones are not loading. Those are probably the ones that
Goddamn.
aren't loaded. Yeah, so just show those real quickly.
So basically, oh wow, oh I can just click and zoom. Hang on, I found a remedy.
I appreciate the fact that I had the foresight to put your God of War scaling right at the very beginning because we're an hour and 41 minutes in.
I know. So basically, if you share the screen,
Here, let me.
gosh,
I'm fine.
this is the idol that is listed in mission 19 when you go to the room where you're basically being looped between different space-time portals. It specifically says stop the vicious circle by bending space and time. Looks like something that could be inserted here. You later get the Samsara, which specifically says it symbolizes the time-space continuum, uses to restore ordered time-space rifts. You plug this into the statue, and this is what it tells you. It is open to rift in the time-space continuum. The rift seems to lead elsewhere. Referring to that room, meaning just that room on its own, is a, like, given that and the Samsara's description, that it's just used to repair time-space rifts that send you to different locations in time and space. Meaning the demon world, on a bare minimum, is a fucking multiverse. It has a multiverse that is sitting inside of its boundaries. It also has several statements for endless size, endless sea, endless void. Echidna's jungle is also referred to as a deep and expansive forest, which by the context of a multiverse would have to be very, very large, probably either universal or higher in size. But it doesn't stop there. We have confirmations that there are infinite armies of demons that exist within the demon world, as Mundus's army is still intact. We have confirmation that Argosax and Mundus split the demon world in half and divided hell under 2 camps, and you'd still have an infinite army on one side and an infinite army on the other, and they're still active as well. We have confirmation that Sparta killed an infinite number of demons. They killed an endless number of their kin. We have confirmation that there's an infinite number of Homoskira that invade during that one fucking oil rig mission in DMC2. The point I'm trying to make is that a lot of these demons don't exist in these specific infinite-sized spaces. They don't have statements for this, so we'd have to have enough dimensions to account for all of these multiple infinite sets of demons, all the endless size spaces, the multiple different space-time continuums, giving that and the blatant relationship. The point I'm trying to make here is that you can You could easily argue the Qliphoth is a fifth dimensional like entity because it just views all of this as like illusion by comparison. It's the same relationship to it as fiction. But the demon world technically qualifies for this as well because it is literally what's left of the primordial chaos which birthed the human world into existence. And especially if we use the Ascended Athena argument for the God of War guys, kind of have to remember that the only statements involving Athena are the statements from that interview and what is in the game, which just clarifies that her sacrifice to save Zeus brought her to a higher existence, and that she is simply in a realm with higher power. The demon world doesn't just have a statement of being an upper realm or a higher realm. It has an explicit relationship of superiority to an infinite degree with multiple infinite-sized armies, a fucking multiverse existing inside of it, and it's literally a part of the original construct that birthed this 4D construct and a stronger construct that has consistent 4D feats into existence. So you can very easily argue that there is 5D stuff in DMC. Now,
And that would just be scaling to minor demons based on everything he just said.
yes, and even if you didn't scale them to this AP wise, they have the, like I said, they possess the energy that makes up the darkness of the demon world. So they would have resistances to this thing as well, and have resistances that are scaled to this.
So
now,
just
one
to
last.
Oh, you got one more thing to say?
I was going to say one last note that I put here. So I've said this before, like the people who scaled this, who believed Kratos could get through DMC2, don't seem to think he needs concessions. So we will not be offering these. Zim already mentioned this. Will did not be given the protagonist swap. His AP, his speed scaling is being given, but he's not giving resistance to demonic energy. He's not being scaled to the level of power and speed that Dante has in the scenario. He's not being protected by the plot, so we, like the omniscient narrator, just drops him in and just fucks off, like Chuck from Supernatural. Well, I guess technically not because he was there the entire time, but you get my meaning.
Yeah. So basically, just this will be a more accurate, I guess, protagonist swap, so to speak. This will be using what they consider to be the accurate.
Not even a protagonist swap anymore because we're not swapping him in Dante's position. Well, we are, but we're not giving him any of the things that would make it a protagonist swap. We're not giving him the 3 life system. And he's also not being given prior knowledge. So if he goes through DMC3 and whether he wins or loses, and he gets spawned in DMC1, he does not get knowledge of his encounters in 3. We gave him pre-existing knowledge in the protagonist swap by explaining he would know how to fight demons on Malay Island based on his experiences with Temagru. He does not get that here.
So at this point, passive fear manipulation, energy drainage, madness manipulation, fucking throwing the book at Kratos on top of like passive corruption. Go ahead.
Oh wait, we're not done. We're not done. No. That's all the stuff that skills the lesser demons. Now we're gonna get to the bosses.
Oh no.
And one more thing. Everything that I mentioned here, this is all without POC.
Yes, without the mythical POC.
The thing that people seem to think that DMC needs to contest God of War.
I want to separate that because I first want to see what we could argue without Pinnacle of Combat. There will be a Pinnacle of Combat section. It's going to be a lot shorter, but there will be one.
Oh, yeah. So then I just point out a couple of the things that are obstacles for him. Hell Vanguard, the Cerberus, Virgil, all the Virgil fights, Heart of the Leviathan, the Neo Haywire Generator, Garion, Doppelganger, and Arkham. So the Hell Vanguard literally has direct statements that he is feared by the demons in the underworld. So to be feared by demons in the underworld means to have layered levels of fear manipulation.
Oh, it's his favorite term, layered.
So what this means is that, much like Dante, he can cause fear to demons that are actually enhanced by fear and already have resistance to fear manipulation.
Actually, can you get that Gilbert statement real quickly about Gilbert being anti-fear, just so we can like put that in here now in case someone's like they never showed it or something?
I'm pretty sure I already put that in there.
In this section?
It's in the recording.
Here, let me
recording channel voice chat.
Let me see.
Yeah, so he says right here, come in here and get this. This isn't a warm up. His attacks are so fast and devastating that beasts were unable to land a single blow and cut through these. The demons faltered at his overwhelming strength. The creatures that fed on human despair begin to feel despair themselves. There's also like another one that I can grab like real quick
Well, I'll say
because he also says like what delicious despair, and then his body is stated to be brimming with power.
yeah. Let's just get that one just that way because again, well, we don't really need this in particular for like being enhanced by fear. If that is the case, then like, well, just more of it, just so that way. At this point, we should be taking at our word. We've literally Mangler himself has also shown hundreds of like not hundreds.
I forgot about this one as well.
Oh,
I thought I didn't need that, but whatever.
I mean, we're already here. Just put it in there if you want. Just want to make it clear. We have this
Gilbert
shit.
just states they can't feel despair.
What?
Yeah, I forgot about that one. My bad.
Well, that is kind of fucking important, Mr. Fucking Laird fear
But there's like
manipulation.
so many fucking pieces of evidence. Like at this point, I'm literally suffocating a small child. Like I don't know what you.
Why is that your analogy?
I don't know what you.
Demons feel despair, Gilbert. Fine pronounce. You have our blood course through your veins. You have the mongrel half-breed offspring. You are the mongrel half-breed human demon. You betrayed our side. That's right. So you know I can't feel something as simple as despair. Time unfroze.
Yep.
So they were talking in frozen time.
Yeah, let me see.
Yeah, and just to be clear, that's probably one of the reasons why Argosax became despair embodied, because, like, I guess normal demons don't fear fear, and then Argosax is like, but what if I became the fear?
Well, so, like, the issue here is that the Hell Vanguard, in the example that I'm providing, is the first quote-unquote boss. I know it's weird because technically he's classified as a lesser demon, so I get to cheat here. But he has a health bar, so I get to say
he's a boss once.
Yeah, but basically,
so he layered fear manipulation, very easy to understand. So even standard resistances to fear, especially what Gilbert they're saying they don't feel despair at all, would not
they don't
work.
Matter. They're shit basically. So Kratos' resistance to the concept of fear and fear itself, like that doesn't work.
Which
and keep in mind, like the Hell Vanguard doesn't have to like attack you for this to be a thing. Like demons just naturally fear him, so just being in his presence will cause him insatiable fear.
Yes, as far as I know, even that outside power of hope, I don't think Kratos has resistances to fear manipulation, because technically fear Zeus completely like eviscerates him, and then he needs the power of hope to win the fight, and that's the only fear resistance you could, or unless Mangler you would know another example that you could argue Kratos would resist fear, because Zeus didn't resist it, none of the gods of Olympus resisted it. That's for fucking sure.
Here's the other one. I forgot about this. This is actually when he killed the mercenaries. Yeah, so he literally... So, as soon as it's literally shown that when he summons in all of the demons, and you can see this on the page as well if you read up. I was just highlighting the one that mainly works. That as soon as the demons show up, the mercenaries, whom I said, like... using Gru's statements, the mercenaries is similar statements where they are career hitmen and assassins that will kill people without like a thought, just for a paycheck. They see the demons and they shit themselves. They are like, oh my god, we are going to die. And it's not like the demons are doing anything. They're just spawning into the room, and the mercenaries are like, we're done. It's nice knowing you, Phil.
Yeah, you even have right here, with delicious despair, I can feel myself swallowing with power. Yeah, so fear would empower them. Then,
fear literally amps them.
Yeah.
They just... Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh. So, yeah.
So...
Hell Vanguard bypasses Kratos' fear resistance. If he even has any. Again, the gods of Olympus were not exactly resisting the concept of fear. And only Zeus had, like, the main concept inside of him. The others were just, like, byproducts.
I was also gonna say that if you think, we'll get to this part a little bit, but if you think like him having immeasurable speed is really like gonna matter here, this is a passive effect, so all the characters could be infinitely slower than Kratos, and he'd still get haxed.
Yes,
because like, so from his perception, if he has immeasurable speed, he actually has less of a chance to survive. if we argue they, so let me see if I explain this. Maybe not immeasurable speed, more so. It's more like the speed difference. So if we argue he's vastly faster than the demons and he's not comparable to them, obviously it'd be worse if he were slower. But if he's comparable, he actually has a higher likelihood of surviving than if he's way faster, because he's just gonna see them spawn in super slowly. Like he's gonna perceive them as statues, which means they're gonna be corrupting him the entire time, and he's literally gonna fall into fear. So we actually see this a lot in God of War 1's novel as an example, where he just like he collapses, and again you can go check this information out in the why Dante versus Kratos matchup doesn't work. But now you're kind of seeing why it's not just limited to Dante. The examples that I provided in the video, Kratos has like 6 different nightmares over the course of like God of War 1's thing. And granted, that's also because he's being tortured at this point. But even if we're using God of War 3 Kratos, which is the version that we'd be using here, he has shown no resistance to this. So if he gets hit by these effects, he's going to start having nightmares again. He's going to start experiencing and memorizing the night that his family died, or thinking about that, and he's going to be paralyzed with fear of the creatures that he's seeing.
Not because Kratos himself would have like any control over that, just because like
it's not his fault. It's just like how, like, even some of the demons in the verse don't even understand how other demons are able to fear hacks them. So Kratos for sure is not going to have an understanding of what he's experiencing.
Yeah,
but even if I said like the immeasurable speed might have an effect, it wouldn't. The Hell Vanguard can jump through space and time. He can literally jump through temporal, well, it's referred to as temporal distortion on the ground, and temporal and spatial rifts. So he can literally jump through space and time when he does his, like, when you hear that dong sound, that the guidebook confirms that his temporal and spatial rifts are spatial and temporal rifts. It's the same statement, just inverted. You check the guidebook. But yeah, he can attack you straight through space and time as well. So moving beyond linear time isn't really like necessarily going to save him. I can make arguments that the Hell Vanguard is actually immeasurable. I can also prove that demonic power can send objects through and beyond time directly, as the Devil Crests in DMC3 are referred to as using your power to transcend time. The Great Restoration will occur. The context for transcendence here is that Dante destroys the crystals in this situation, and he completely obliterates them. He actually has to revert them back to their original position. And the Japanese text for this actually says, pour your strength into me and send the 4 crystal lights back into time. I don't have that listed here, but I could go and get it if Sam wants to. If it's really necessary.
If at this point they would doubt our word, I don't know what else to say. Like, we've literally sourced practically everything else. You've sourced where it comes from. It can be found.
People are petty, not pity.
So
people are petty.
So just to be clear, even if you believe this wouldn't work on demons who aren't in their true bodies, which I think the DMC1 novel does state, even outside the true bodies, they have passive fear manipulation.
Yes, all of those feats are done when they're in human corpses.
But, so just to clarify, the fucking situation hasn't really changed for Kratos. Once the demon world opens, he's kind of screwed.
This is not applicable to the Hell Vanguard. The Hell Vanguard is specifically stated to take a special catalyst to allow it to appear in the human world. So the argument of it being weaker isn't applicable here, because it's taking a specific medium to allow it to show up here, when normally it wouldn't be able to.
And again, just to clarify, we also have all the healing, all the regeneration, all the power increases you can argue for demons. And that's literally the first boss Kratos fights in DMC3.
There's also the problem that, like, the power of hope thing, like, that's the main win con. So like if we're using power of hope Kratos, technically speaking, that's end of God of War 3 Kratos, after he's had all of his weapons and equipment destroyed, with the exception of Blades of Exile, which we're giving him, like, the powers of the Blades of Chaos and stuff like that. The power of hope, obviously, technically not a weapon, but we're considering like a force that he can use offensively. So
Yes.
effectively a weapon. And the Blade of Olympus.
Yes.
So he's got like energy absorption, some limited durability negation, very minor healing negation, not enough to negate low godly or mid godly regeneration.
Or at least has never demonstrated to do
Never
something.
demonstrated that, not even remotely. And it has like some intangibility, some fire manipulation.
If you want to argue that like it negates Gaia's fucking healing factor because she made herself a new form based off the novels, it's like we don't have a time frame for any of that. We also
even then you gotta like the problem is that when we get later into DMC, we have demons that can resist layers of negated low godly and high godly. So even if you could prove now, you're basically arguing that it's like, oh, I can finally stop the demons. You mean the lesser demons? You mean like the weakest demons in DMC?
And as far as that, I mean, again, so if we're using Hope Kratos, we have to not give him access to, well, because if with the Blades of Hades, you could argue, oh, well, he can absorb their souls.
No, because he can't rip their souls out, because they're resistant to soul manipulation.
Oh, no.
Nope.
Well, I was going to say, even if he absorbed them, that would just corrupt him faster. Like, he has no resistance to the corruption. Like,
I was also going to say, so if Kratos actually manages to successfully kill a demon, quote unquote, so even if he like, so this is weird. So I haven't talked about this with him, but I was going to mention this. There's an argument to be made that he could restore his life energy with the Blades of Exile if he's fighting a demon that isn't using its true form, because it might not have all of its demonic energy. But anytime he takes any energy from a demon with the Blades of Exile, or he absorbs their souls with the Claws of Hades, he would immediately get corrupted. Like whatever effects or status conditions you think he'd be experiencing when he's around the demon passively, that is nothing compared to what he would experience if he were to take that energy and put it inside of his body, which is exactly what he does with the Claws of Hades and the Blades of Exile.
Yeah, so he doesn't have resistance to the corruption on the soul level, which just completely transmutates you, so your body, or at least, so he's shown resistance to being turned to stone, but that's not as layered as what the demon world does.
That's not anything like what the demon world can do. Plus, like I said, even if you say, well, you can resist transmutation, good. Prove that you can resist like 5 to 6 other simultaneous status conditions, some of which are layered. So even if you had...
are you sure not all of them are layered at this point?
Not all of them are layered. I'm just saying, like, the Hell Vanguard, he's the first enemy. He's the first enemy.
Oh, he's the first...
he's the first guy coming in. Like, imagine walking into a club to like shoot up a mob boss, and you're getting slapped by the first guy that walks in the room.
The bouncer can actually do his job for once.
Like, and then I also mentioned here that self-actualization. So all of the problems that you have to experience fighting the demons, all of them can self-actualize greater abilities.
Yes.
And what's fucked up here is that if Kratos lands a hit on any of them, even if he destroys their body, they can just make a new one, and they've now come back with power, demonic power equivalent to the pain you just inflicted on them. So that fucker is going to get up and he's going to bum rush you. So slowly but surely. So basically what this means is that unlike Dante's like situation where Dante actually has feats of like being able to negate these levels of regen, Kratos would just be one-shotting a lot of these demons.
Until they come back.
The demons that he one-shots would just come back stronger, and he would no longer be able to one-shot them after a period of time. And they would still have the status conditions. He'd still be fighting his own mind and his body and everything. So he'd be getting corrupted, and eventually the demons would be able to react to him. Because they get strong enough to react to him, or he would just get corrupted so many times he'd just get put into a position where he wouldn't physically be able to move.
Again, so like best case scenario with Power of Hope, he can destroy demons in their entirety, even though the Power of Hope never fully demonstrated that. It is implied or stated that he would have destroyed the concept of fear in the Greek pantheon.
What it demonstrates is that you can destroy someone's soul completely and leave behind like a consciousness, but it doesn't destroy, like, the power of fear doesn't destroy Kratos' body. So like, I'm just saying, to destroy demons, you'd have to demonstrate you could completely wipe them from existence. Actually, no, that wouldn't be enough either because they have mid-godly region, so they would just reform as a Soul Eater. So
Do the Soul Eaters just get the combined pain of the demon?
Out. I know, you would have to fucking wipe them out over a ridiculous level. Okay, so now I kind of have to mention. Oh, I didn't mention Cerberus until later for some freaking. Well, so I have to mention Virgil. So Virgil's the main antagonist of DMC3. But you guys might not be aware that Virgil has both accelerated development as a Sparta and he's got reactive evolution. So Sparta, fun fact, actually sealed his power specifically because he sensed it growing too strong. Because he was just too powerful, so he had to put it away. We have direct statements that both him and Dante basically share Sparta's powers, that Sparta's powers are divided among them as a result of being his sons. And then there's also like statements in the anime. If someone wants to look at this at the timestamp, he can. But I'll basically explain that like in the anime,
well, there's no timestamp even then. Like, but no, because last time I did this, they copyright claimed my video.
Okay, yeah, whatever. Okay, so in the anime, anyone who wants to go see this can go look this up. In the 10th episode for the DMC anime, basically you just look at the timestamp on screen. You'll go there. Basically, Baal and Modius, who are the apprentices for Sparta, specifically confirm, because Baal wants to go fight Sparta. He basically wants to fight him to gain his power, to gain right over it, because Modius was like endowed with that powers. And Modius is like, hey, I've already performed my investigation. You don't need to. Sparta's probably alive. And he's like, no, he's dead. I waited for him for 2,000 years. And since he hasn't showing up, I'm going after his son. He's like, why? I'm like, well, I'm going to absorb the soul of the sun Sparta, and then I'll gain the Dark Knight strength. Which means that just having Sparta's soul or something related to Sparta's soul or his blood can give you his powers. We also have I didn't put this in there because it was fucking obvious, but having like Sparta's DNA put into Chen's body resulted in him literally getting like Sparta's abilities.
Yes.
To a degree. But Dante also says blatantly, we are the sons of Sparta. Within each of us flows his blood, but more importantly, his soul. They're also stated in two different source materials, many years across from each other, that have the same powers and abilities. But yeah.
Yeah. So those two scans are loading, but I think we've shown consistently enough that we do have sources for everything we're saying.
Why do you keep saying that like
because I know for a fucking fact that there's a good chance that I'm going to be asked by somebody, oh, well, why didn't you, where was the source for that one? I didn't see that one there. Why didn't you show that? Listen, if we're saying it, it exists.
So the point that I'm trying to make is that they have Sparta's powers. So anything you can scale Sparta to as far as his passives and his physiology scales to his sons. And this also includes the ability to adapt and react to people on the fly, and also grow stronger and develop new skills and powers on the fly as the fight is continuing from moment to moment. And this is done in DMC1's novel by Dante when he fights Gilver, who is specifically designed to counter Dante and counter Dante's adaptability and his reactive evolution. And Dante still kills him.
Yes.
Dante is able to match him blow for blow, and it's only at the very end where basically Gilver pulls a quick one on him because he's like, hey, I stole the shotgun from your foster mother's house after I killed everyone in your life. And then Dante's like, okay, that was a little too much.
It's like, okay, now you've just gotta hurt my feelings. Yeah.
So basically, Virgil also performed all the same feats because he kills all the same fucking knights that Dante does. And he fights stronger versions of these Dantes, so he has even better versions, potentially even layered versions of analytical prediction and reactive growth, power level, evolution, accelerated development. Point being, if he fights Kratos, even if I argue Kratos is infinitely or beyond infinitely faster than him, if Kratos cannot kill Virgil in the first strike, the scenario is over. Because if he, in the case of Mission 7, if he ran up the top of the Timonegru and punched Virgil off the side, and I argue Virgil's soul was destroyed, Virgil would just reform, and then he would come back pissed off as fuck, and he would be just as strong. He would have demonic power equivalent to whatever pain Kratos inflicted to him. And he would have grown, he would have reactively grown in comparison to the power that was demonstrated. So basically, even if Virgil loses, he wins.
Yeah, because he would just come back and just kill Kratos.
So this is also where I kind of point out like that might not even be what happens because Virgil also has sensing capabilities. So both Virgil, Dante, Nero, they all demonstrate that they can essentially not only can they sense souls, they can sense pure demonic energy, they can sense your presences, they can sense like minds and various demons, and I'll have examples of these. So the three manga scans down below basically show Dante sensing like demons' minds floating around, Virgil sensing Dante's presence. We have the examples, obviously the infamous examples from DMC3 where Arkham and Virgil can sense Lady's presence in the tower from multiple kilometers away.
Which don't load at all.
I don't know. Do you at least have the one from the DMC4? DMC3
I have the DMC4 guidebook. I do not have the DMC3 summary.
Yeah, that's all you need. That's all you need. So basically it confirms that Dante, when he's at the front of his shop, can sense Virgil's presence at the top of Timnagru, which currently has arisen above a cloud cover. So that's several kilometers off the ground, but more importantly, Virgil is still standing in the Timnagru when the story scenarios happens. So he's going to sense that Dante has been yeeted out of the DMC verse. And as I said in the protagonist swap, but I'll say here, Virgil will be extremely bloodlusted because now his brother has been removed permanently. Even though he has some animosity with his brothers, he generally does love and care for his brother. Visions of E also supports this, as he thinks fighting with Dante is the best thing ever, in his own words. So if someone were to, which, again, this is not Kratos' fault, he's not responsible for this, but this is just a consequence of him just magically appearing in Dante's shop next to Dante's amulet at the same time Dante disappears from the DMC universe. Virgil is going to put 2 to 2 in together and be like, you're fucking responsible for killing my brother or disposing of my brother.
No one kills Dante but me.
Yeah, no, literally like a Vegeta complex where it's like, no one kills my brother but me. Also, I would like to point out that given later statements down here about, do you have the DMC2 novel scans? Are you able to look at those? Those work?
The next scans that are available for me after your DMC3 manga scans are specifically where it says DMC4 after he can also detect Kratos' thoughts.
Oh boy.
Well, it's fine. What did the scans say? It's fine.
No. I got it. Yeah, it's fine because it works. How about that? There we go. All right. So let me get this one. All right. So sharing my screen now. So basically what this one says is that when Dante is sensing Chen's powers, again, these things scale to Virgil as well because these are just basic sensing capabilities. When Chen basically absorbs even the beast heads, has demonstrated power and a level of power and ability that Dante has never known, he's able to sense his aura and is able to determine his lust and his lust for power and knowledge. He's also able to determine when Ducas is being possessed by Void Mundus, how much power he currently wields, based on his, not just his position, but his deposition as well. So Dante and Virgil, both with aura sensing and whatnot, can also sense your levels of power. So what I'm saying by this is that as soon as Kratos spawns into the DMC universe, Virgil's going to know exactly how powerful he is. He's going to know exactly where he is. He's going to know exactly what he's doing. And he's going to know that he's responsible for, or at least he's going to assume, Kratos is responsible for Dante being removed from the DMC universe. So given the circumstances, I can actually argue in character he would DT first. Because now he knows Kratos is a threat to him. Again, if we're assuming the 2A and 5D stuff is too much for too much for Virgil to handle. I've already presented arguments for why it doesn't fucking matter. But if it isn't enough, Virgil can also account for that as well. Because again, if he goes DT, he basically becomes a full demon, and now all those side effects that I mentioned, the side effects that Virgil would have, which are higher and higher levels of the same fear manipulation, the higher levels of all the same things like empathetic manipulation, sleep manipulation, madness manipulation, so on and so forth. Virgil would just be passively admitting those. So by the time he could just stand there in Devil Trigger and Kratos would come running into the room and fucking collapse because he wouldn't even be able to like.
I'm sorry, that image was funny.
I know.
But so
Uh,
even if we assume that like demons aren't 5D, for example, naturally, and let's say they're just 4D, Kratos comes with the power of hope. There are demons who can match fruit users or people who ate the
yes.
fruit, and they just got stronger with demonic power. So demonic
So
power can close that gap.
let me explain this clearly. You want to know how many Demon King level entities in the series have an actual grounded explanation, aka the fruit, for how they became that powerful? One. One fucking enemy in the entire series has that, and that's Mundus. Abigail, Fusotaris, Bulwark, and
Urizen.
Balrog, basically all of Argosax's faction. Argosax, Urizen, um, even Pluto to some degree.
I mean,
Uh,
the Order of the Sword.
yeah, the Order of the Sword and some of the stuff that they made. Sparta as well, because Sparta's just like
A
near
normal dude.
Demon King level. He gets a humanity boost and he's like, I'm more powerful than all of you. These fuckers do not have an explanation for how powerful they just became that powerful. Modus is the only one that's like, yeah, I ate something that actually has like feats.
I had
The rest
something
of
that
them are
looks
just
like. Right?
the rest of them are just that powerful,
Yeah,
just with
and
no explanation.
yeah, and they would, as far as we know, they just got there with demonic power. So demonic, which to be fair, the fruit is concentrated demonic power, which sees all of reality as an illusion, etc. Blah blah blah.
But it
Point
at least
stance.
has like some grounded thing. All of these other people, especially Balrog, literally states like, I was gaining power to kill Argosax, and then Dante shows up and like eliminates him, so I had no one to brush it off with. Which means the way they gain power is they just self-actualize over a long period of time. They just get stronger because they want to be stronger. So
So
it literally does not matter.
yeah, so even if he was potentially 5D and we say Virgil's 4D, there are arguments to be made that demonic power can close that gap. Especially since Kratos unfortunately has very few options when it comes to killing these people.
I would also like to point out this Virgil's not the only one involved in this scenario. Mundus is watching the entire events of this thing unfold. He has a horde of demons that are currently serving under him that are giving him information about what's happening in the human world, and he's watching the events currently unfold. So if he decides to intervene, which he literally does at the end of DMC3 when he thinks Virgil's wounded, Kratos is also fucked
Oh yeah, that higher,
because he has that same higher dimensional thing.
yeah, no, but that higher dimensional thing again, Mundus ate a fruit that just gives him the pure raw power of an object that sees all of reality as an illusion, and Mundus with a fraction of that power would still scale that high. He was afraid to fight Virgil in his weakened state.
But there's more. So Virgil also has stealthing capabilities for
Good
his sensing.
God, this is gonna be almost as long as the
Oh,
actual
I
God
know.
of War.
So Virgil and Dante can both hide from characters like this. So Dante can literally sit on Burial's tail, and Burial has like a full inner monologue, and he doesn't actually realize Dante's sitting there until Dante points it out. Dante has to like literally help him find him. Virgil walks past Dante in the DMC3 manga, and Dante doesn't realize he's there until Virgil decides to like leave. Virgil also has other feats, and then there's other examples of this in Four's novel, which aren't really like too necessary. The example that I'm basically just providing is that Virgil can slip inside your senses, like past your if you have sensing capabilities, which Kratos doesn't. But even if he did have the sensing capabilities that a lot of the demons have, Virgil can just ignore those completely. He can slip inside your range of sensing and slip in and out without completely undetected.
Yes.
So he would be able to approach Kratos or figure out a plan of attack if he needed to. He wouldn't have to sneak attack him if people are going to be like, well, Virgil wouldn't do that. That's out of character. He doesn't have to attack you. He can just observe you, which, again, given that he's bloodlusted and he wants to kill Kratos, I would argue he would actually try to gather information and intel on Kratos. Also, Dante and Virgil also have telepathy, so they can read your mind as well.
Like, again, all this is just hammering home if Kratos even makes it past the Hell Vanguard.
Well, hang on. Then we get to Cerberus. So I did point this out, but like Kratos has never resisted like absolute zero temperatures of ice. Cerberus scales above the Frosts, who are actually above absolute zero. They don't have any demonic desires, transformations, buffs, or amps to do that. They're just doing that casually, so their ice would actually get colder if they wanted to kill you, because their demonic desire would just manifest colder ice. Cerberus is specifically stated to be ice cold to the core, which would include the soul. We know this later because we literally have statements later from King Cerberus that says, "I'll freeze you down to your very soul." Same tribe of demons, literally produces the exact same ice. He's just a stronger Cerberus demon. So even if I say Cerberus is like, I don't know, FTL speeds and he's just chilling in that room, like he just has to roar once, or Kratos just has to kill him and he just regenerates, roars one time, and then that's it.
Well, I wouldn't even say he has to roar. The room's already like affected by his ice manipulation.
It is. It also, like, I would like to point out, like, he's already infused in his ice technically, so not to mention he also amps himself up to a higher level by turning himself red, so I would argue his ice gets even deadlier as the fight continues. That is the first boss, if you want to think about it technically, in like mission 3.
Why do you have so many of these scans here? Good God, half of this shit's not needed. Bad Mangler.
Hang on. Then we have the Neo Haywire generator in mission 12. So when you beat Beowulf, which we're being very gracious by assuming he goes that far,
because there's a lot of true form demons he's got to go through at this point.
Yeah,
and Virgil.
Yes, and Virgil. We're assuming he makes it past the first Virgil, which best case scenario, he hits Virgil as hard as he can, Virgil gets destroyed and then regenerates shortly afterwards. Or Virgil dies and goes to the demon world, respawns, pulls out Yamato and fucking swings it at the time-space barrier and comes walking back to Temenagru and then just DTs. Because that is exactly what would happen. Because when he died in DMC1, he just went to the demon world. So, basically, the Neo Haywire generator passively sucks out your soul. And it can suck out Dante's soul. And Dante has like 1 to potentially 2 layers of soul manipulation at this point, as far as his resistance is. And it can not only irradiate his soul, it can completely drain it out. It does give him power, but like it's able to disable him on the ground and physically put him down.
This entire thing would just screw over Kratos in any capacity. Because like not only is it draining Kratos' soul, which to be fair, while he does resist getting his soul yanked out by Hades, that stops after a moment. Now imagine Hades is doing it forever while he's trying to do other shit.
Yeah, I would also like to point out, like, Hades had to physically grab him. This would just so this is a problem more so, like, this is a problem that we ran into the protagonist swaps, that due to the way that DMC is structured on a mission level, a lot of characters get screwed by DMC's mission layout because you can't pass through certain areas of the Temenagru. Like, you can't just like run up it or anything. You actually kind of have to go through certain areas to traverse to the tower. You can't get into the Lair of Judgment unless you get the Neo Haywire generator. You have to do that because you have to get it to operate the bridge, to get into the final room, to then get access to the Orichalcums, to open the Orichalcums, whatever they're called, to open the final door to the Lair of Judgment. So he has to go to the Neo Haywire generator to go get it. There's no other way to get to Virgil's position in the Lair of Judgment.
And there'd also be no way that Kratos would know either, so he'd go to Arkham, and Arkham would tell him, take this to go over there.
Which, keep in mind, Arkham in this scenario would still be helping him, because he still wants the power of Sparta, so he'd still be approaching him as a jester, and Kratos might try to kill him, obviously, but like we said before, that wouldn't fucking matter anyway. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that, like, we would fall under a similar circumstance as the protagonist swap situation, where the power of hope would essentially try to save him. And it could, but it would be exhausting a massive amount of energy trying to keep him alive from all these things all time. Like he'd be having to activate the power of hope every single fight,
Also, since I just
over and over and over and over again.
since I just remembered this, if someone's gonna be like, "Well, Kratos is cursed not to die," does not matter. He will just get corrupted. There are ways around it. It's not non-factor. He does not need to die to fail.
Type 8 immortality is completely fucking irrelevant. All the demons I mentioned have 6 different types of immortality. If you think having a type of immortality is a big thing, refer to section 3 where I explained that having
There's one type A.
this one good thing isn't enough to get you through tier 2. This is an example of what happens.
Yeah. So then we have Gyrians, which, just to save some time here, can just affect demons who can move in no time.
So demons can move when time gets stopped. Garian's like, no, you can't anymore. I can manipulate you even though you're unaffected by time manipulation and space manipulation.
All
so
right. Let's just try to move
Kratos
on.
does not get past that. He gets. Another thing I'd like to mention. Quicksilver is a demonic time wave. So the moment he gets hit by that, status condition, status condition, status condition. And, in addition to all the other status conditions he was getting hit for 13 missions. Oh, doppelganger. Okay. Literally an automatic Witcon. So as soon as he goes into the room, assuming he's even made it this far, doppelganger just copies his shadow. So it would have all of his powers and abilities, all of his speed, and everything. And yes, he has layered shadow manipulation, because Dante, who can interact with shadows in the DMC1 novel, as I have listed down here, can literally physically beat them with his bare hands. When he's also Tony, by the way. So he doesn't have the concept of his name, his powers, because he's actually given away his name as Dante. He gets it back later. He doesn't have a devil trigger. He hasn't gone to the demon world for the first time. He's not being amped by that. And rebellion isn't awakened on the 2 different levels. So he's actually vastly stronger and has way more powers and abilities and more layers of his powers and abilities. He goes into this room and he can't touch Doppelganger. He also can't touch Doppelganger with Beowulf, which is literally intended to be his actual weakness. It's just light. And it doesn't work. So something that's directly designed to counter him with a character that has direct abilities that are designed to affect him don't affect him.
Yes. And again, this is just DMC3, and this is assuming he makes it even near this far because of all the passes that would screw him over.
And for anyone who also wanted to say whether the head of Helios would work, he can survive direct contact with light, and even when you blast the entire room and the light switches, he can flood the entire room in darkness again. You also have to prove the head of Helios could stop 2 layers of shadows and darkness manipulation, which it doesn't.
Again, and then like DMC1, stronger demons by default, same bullshit. DMC2, same story, same verse as the first.
Yes. So I was just gonna say Arkham qualifies for all the same stuff, and he's just way stronger. So
again, like at least in DMC3 I could understand. By the time you get to DMC2, though, no.
I couldn't even understand in DMC3 because this is where the layers begin. It gets worse. So as people are wondering, as this video is probably very long, probably an hour at this point.
Are you fucking kidding me? We're at 2 hours and 30 minutes.
Great. So we're at 2.5 hours of explaining why it's wrong. There's another full game all the way before we get to DMC2. If anyone can imagine how worse that is in their own mind, just let me know, like, the consequences of your imagination. Because now we're going to section 5, the final section, explaining what would happen if you go through DMC with their scaling that we just presented, using POC now. So
here are all the scans that POC is canon. We can link these down below if you want to read them for yourself.
Yes.
Here's
basically
definitions of
there's descriptions from the official site that refer to it as an original Capcom authorized and full supervised game, because people have basically made the claim that this game isn't canon with no evidence. You actually have to prove that, but the official site states it's fully supervised by Capcom, as genuine authorization. We also just got a confirmation that there's been a trademark that's been released for it in the West as well. Kind of stupid for a company to be releasing a trademark for a game if it's not canon. They want to produce it. I mean, it's also referred to as an orthodox sequel to the Devil May Cry series. Refers to it as a genuine Devil May Cry mobile game. jointly developed by Yuchong Development and the Capcom official Devil May Cry team. Orthodox, by 3 or 4 different definitions, is literally referred to as standard, traditional, or like normal. I mean, mainly it's referring to like obviously like religious activities, but it is the traditional practice of that. So yeah, it's fucking canon. There's no
As of this moment, there's no reason to assume it's not canon. There's enough evidence to support otherwise.
You would need to refute this evidence.
All right,
completely.
So
now we get into the meat of this. So some people have tried to generously provide the accusation that POC has forged scans. No, it is not. So, fun fact about POC, it actually has a couple different builds of the game due to having like several different developers and whatnot. The builds that you see on the Nebula Joy website is the APK build, which is the current standard version of the build, which was created after they wanted to jump off they wanted to try something different from the Billy Bill version, which was the original beta. But both versions currently receive actual updates, and you can currently still receive new content for both of them, so they're both currently valid. That's actually why there are different loading screens for the APK build versus the original. And if you wanted to show this.
So here's an example of going into a boss fight, and there's a translation here. Obviously, we don't speak Chinese, but what does this say? So this, according to a translation software we use, known as Google Lens, says the following. Proto, which just means Pluto. As a demon...
We'll provide the scan later for this down below.
As a demon lord, more powerful, basically. You'll see this, but basically, this is to show these scans are legit. There are 2 different builds, both being updated side by side. It's not really a solid argument to say, well, one doesn't have it, therefore it's not valid if they're both being updated side by side. I don't know why they don't both have it. Maybe there's something with the coding. Maybe it's easier to not include them for now. No.
There's also, in order to prove like a forgery, you have to prove some editing. So like none of the scans are actually formatted out of like the frame. Like they're not adjusted or like cropped out either. Like they actually fit the full specter of the page as well. So there's not any evidence of editing either.
This was taken. This actual footage was taken from a live stream from someone who streamed the mobile game to us directly. So
yes,
no evidence of tampering as far as we can tell.
Also, I would like to point out that for someone to say this, you clearly don't know too much. I'm not saying the people who are watching this did. I'm just saying, like, if you are to claim this, you probably don't know too much about how POC's development has actually worked or any of the assets in the game, because the actual dialogue of the characters in the missions and the cutscenes are identical across builds. The only thing that's different is just the loading screens and a few gameplay bugs, like some like damage combination, like combo attacks that were like nerfed from one version to another because they were too overpowered or whatever, and mainly just like a couple glitches. But that's like, glitches are typically a common thing that's adjusted when you shift from one build to another. Dialogue is really the only one that we didn't have an example for, but again, not dialogue. The loading screens are just the only ones that we don't have an explanation for why that is, but like you can't discount that as not being canon. You have to prove why, and we already have examples of both of them having ongoing support.
Yes.
So both of them would be valid. So now
to the scans.
Now we've finally done that. So one last thing before I explain, why would someone make this claim? Why would someone make the claim that the POC scans are fake? Why? What is in POC is essentially...
Do you really need to sell this? We are already
I do, because I don't think people actually understand how much of a shitstorm they unloaded when they decided to comment on that video.
Just DMC2, not the others. It's just DMC2. I asked for this.
So basically, it essentially invalidates all Tier 2 matchups for DMC and several Tier 1 matchups. I would also like to point out that this build, the Billy Bill version, actually references more source material than the APK version does. It actually references stuff that exists in the lore already and does require another video. But yeah, we'll get to that. So now we're going to go down to the POC scans. So I've organized them. These are the ones that apply to all demons. Now let me read below. So these are directly translated from Chinese. So this is referring to the power of the name. From the moment of their birth, names are one of the most sacred things for demons. They represent not only power, but also the concept of their own existence, the basic principles which predate even the creation of the demon world itself. It manifests as part of the soul that forms them and their dark hearts. So essentially, their names are the concept of their existence, as I was already saying, except now they predate the demon world in addition to the human world. So it manifests in their soul, which means now their souls are also type 1 concepts. So the power of hope in this circumstance would literally do nothing to their souls and wouldn't destroy them at all. They would hit the soul and nothing would happen.
Assume the power of hope can interact with souls, because even that's a little sketchy.
It can.
You say it can?
No. It does. It does in game. It's just like it wouldn't do anything to a demon's soul. Well,
Right.
that's not the only one. We're going down to the second one. So that already, like, that one scan already invalidates his entire win con for the entire verse. But there's about 10 more. So here's one. Demons. Creatures that have existed before the creation of the human world, spawned by the primordial chaos that preceded reality and formed by the demon world. All but the weakest demons do not care what they lose. Their bodies, their names, their souls, or everything. As long as they can persist, they can regenerate and continue fighting without rest. So as long as demons want to fight, they'll basically have infinite stamina. Okay? They can lose their names, which are the concept of their existence and their powers. Their souls, which are also concepts. Their bodies, or everything, which would include their minds. So they can lose 4 to 5 different aspects of their existence and regenerate as long as they want to keep fighting. And this applies to not the weakest demons, but this would apply to demons, certain stronger, lesser demons, and like all boss demons in the series. This is what we refer to as high godly regeneration. This means even if you destroyed them on the conceptual level, they would just come back. So aside from the fact that you can't even prove that you'd be able to affect them, even if you could, they would just walk it off. Then we have the delicious statements about the soul. So to explain what happens with the soul, it is stated to contain mysteries that neither humans nor demons understand, but all possess. A fundamental ninth dimensional form that generally originates and returns to a higher dimension beyond the eightfold path. It contains not only the mind and memories, but also all information about the being and its ancestors since the beginning of time.
I don't think I need to explain how a fundamental ninth-dimensional object that everyone can interact with, destroy, and everything just completely ends this.
I also think I need to also explain how it says like it contains their mind and memory and also their information. So you would have to prove, since the previous statement establishes that they can regenerate from everything, that Kratos can destroy something that can regenerate from 7 fundamental different aspects of its existence on a 9th dimensional level.
So at that point, again, just completely can't any argument just completely gone. This is all just over.
Even if you go by VSB's logic, where they argue that they don't scale to 9D stuff, technically speaking, they still have to give them higher dimensional existence, which means that essentially their souls are in a 9th dimensional plane of existence above where they're currently located. So assuming you were able to destroy their physical body, they just make a stronger one. They just keep coming back. So you would never be able to permanently kill them. They would just, like, what would happen is that the greed demon that you see in game, you know, the one with the coffin, like when you kill one of the prides, he would just transform into one of those little swirly souls, would fall back down to the ground, would make another body. And that would just keep happening over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, infinitely until the end of the game or until Kratos dies. For every single enemy in the entire game and the entire series.
No, with PLC, like, it's just over. Demons can come back whenever they want. On top of what we mentioned about demonic power, like, Kratos literally kills a demon, quote unquote kills. It comes back and it's like round 2.
Round 2, stronger than ever, still corrupting you, can't die, whatever, fuck you.
This time I brought my infinite homies with me.
So I was gonna explain that now we have the resistance things.
Good
so these
God.
these actually apply more so to the Spartas because the Spartans are able to affect these. But a lot of people obviously are banking on like Kratos's Type A mortality. What about his Type A mortality? As long as Power of Hope exists, he can exist. That doesn't matter. So the Morning Banshee is an example of a demon that is encountered in POC. It's basically it's mistaken for a couple things. It's basically it's a deadly scream that will kill anyone who hears it. Often mistaken for a ghost on the prowl, this fierce demon is capable of creating a strange connection with its prey. It cannot die no matter what it does. As long as the most essential aspect of her target exists somewhere, she always comes back to him immediately, even if she has to rise from the dead. So it does have very explicit Type 4 resurrective capabilities, or Type 4 immortalities, which most demons already have. But it literally cannot die as long as an aspect of their target exists. That sounds exactly like Type 8 immortality, the same kind of immortality that Kratos has.
And what does Dante do with this demon? Just out of curiosity.
Dante kills this demon and prevents it from regenerating like he kills every single fucking demon in the series. So Virgil also has the same regen negation. I would also like to point out that Virgil, and for anyone who thinks we're like kind of bluffing of the regen negation, look up photos of Beowulf or Bulwark or Cerberus after their fights with Dante. They're missing limbs despite having healing factors. They can't regenerate despite having all these things because Dante nullifies the regen. So not only can they nullify this, they can also nullify forms of immortality. One strike from Virgil would nullify his Type 8 immortality.
We're hitting 2 hours and 40 minutes here.
Good.
Let's try and speed run some of the less important ones.
More stuff. Basically, a strange demon that doesn't enter in the concepts of living or dead forms and is able to summon and influence the spirits of other demons to fight by his side. When he encounters an enemy or a demon he seems unworthy of his service, he will proceed to wipe them out of existence. Every aspect, including their soul, will be completely reduced to nothingness. So complete erasure on like the high godly level with like 7 layers. Just like, I don't want you to join me, die.
All right.
Guess who fights this guy? Dante. So Power of Hope is not doing anything to Virgil.
All right. Do we need to talk about the demon world? I guess, yeah, since there are no weapons in this world that can harm demons.
Yeah, just basically explaining that demons, in order to be affected by, in order for humans to affect demons, they literally had to craft weapons from the demon world to fight them. Just more evidence of why. Basically, none of Kratos' weapons are going to work on him at all. I just thought I'd pull this in after I provided all the other scans to explain, like, this is the context of why weapons don't work on demons.
All right.
Now, the speed and power scans. So, the underworld. Basically, it stated that the Demon King is said to have created a powerful weapon that he feared would destroy his own kingdom, and he sealed... that he even feared would destroy his own kingdom, and he sealed his power to stop it. With his immense great power, he could effortlessly lift the entire structure of the underworld or destroy it. Only a being comparable to his creator could surpass his strength. A weapon would be a nightmare for any entity, living or dead.
So, just to clarify, is that her a translation issue, or is Nightmare a girl? Because that's
a her translation issue. But,
okay, because I'll say, yeah, this is directly referencing Nightmare. You know that guy V summons. You know that asshole in DMC1. You know Nightmare. Yeah. We all know Nightmare.
So we already had 2 other statements that mentioned they could destroy the demon world. What this does is it basically means it's effortlessly. So he could lift a finger, and now he can also bench press the demon world.
And on top of that,
anyone that scales to Mundus or Nightmare can also do this, as confirmed by the statement, and they can kill any entity, living or dead.
And that fucking you'd have to be comparable to Mundus to be able to beat Nightmare.
Yes.
All
right. A little bit of gatekeeping.
Ripper.
Now for the speed ones. So for the Ripper, this is one of the many hunter races that exists among the demons and moves very fast in battle. It moves so fast in battle that its movements are invisible to the naked eye. It can cover every inch of the underworld in less than a day. It does say it can cover every inch of the underworld in less than a day with the sole purpose of finding and killing its prey. Its only purpose is to find and kill its prey. So, I want you to understand what I said about all of the dimensions and things that would be needed to cover all the multiple infinite sets of demons and the multiple infinite size things, the space time fabrics. The Ripper, in order for this statement to be accurate, it would not only have to travel to these areas, it would have to travel to voids that are outside of time and to places like Mundus's palace that are separated from the flow of time entirely, and it would have to cover every single inch of the entire underworld all in less than a day.
Which would also include infinite spaces, etc., etc.
Yeah,
Basically, it's
way faster than infinite speed because it's crossing every single flow of time and places in and outside of flow and time in its entirety.
it's incredibly similar to a statement the Valkyries have in
Yes.
God of War 4, which is what gets put them a potential measurable
Yeah.
speed rating.
Basically, the Valkyries, people argue that the Valkyries are able to become immeasurable because they're able to exist in and go to each of the realms, interacting with all the conflicts happening at the same time. The demon world has explicit statements of like the realm or the various dimensions being in like different flows of time. Dimensions not even having time or being outside of time itself. So I would argue the Ripper being able to travel across a vastly greater number of dimensions. And granted, it is in a day, but like he's still traveling in and outside of time as a whole. And he's just one of the many hunter races. I would also like to point out the Ripper is actually a griffin. So the griffin demon that you see in DMC1, one of Moon's servants, he's actually of the same species. And he shows up later in the series.
So he'd probably be faster.
Yes, he would be faster. This is also not a demon that self-actualized its speed. So it'd be slower than the Fury.
All right. Moving on.
Moving on to the Pluto statement that we mentioned above. So Pluto is obviously demon lord. Before we're going to mention him as a demon lord with more power than his hunters, referring to the Ripper I just mentioned above. His speed is faster than theirs, allowing him to travel and bypass the dimensional axis of the time stream, giving the illusion of teleportation to the naked eye. Any ignorant person who decides to confront him will immediately create an unshakable destiny in which the souls of his victims will be destroyed by his spear. So I'd like to point out that what the Ripper, in all of its massive speed amps that are insane, that you can argue already by the definitions of the Valkyrie are immeasurable, the Ripper perceives Pluto as a teleporter. It can't actually perceive his speed, and just by having more power, his speed is faster than theirs. Meaning, like the stronger demons get, the faster their speed also gets. And he's able to travel and bypass the dimensional axis of the time stream. So he doesn't just move through it; he can completely go in and outside of it with just his raw speed. That's what gives the illusion of teleportation. So he's actually moving with raw speed. That is just blatantly immeasurable speed. There is no way to argue around it unless you just don't like the statement or you don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. I'm just gonna put cap in this a little bit. We don't need to talk about the Hell Vanguard again. We don't need to talk about Navon.
I was just gonna explain. Well, actually, Navon just had like some other things related to that stuff.
You can read Kenegam. The Angel of Damnation, just that by gathering random demonic energy, got infinite or countless curses on people.
Yeah, stuff like that. I was gonna say the last one that I can mention is just that like Dante's weapons, things like Virgil's weapons, they're made from stones that are made of the original chaos. You know, the things that predate all of those realities and scale to the highest levels of stuff within the verse. Dante's weapons are made of those materials.
Yes.
So they're made of the same materials in the same way that the Blades of Exile and the Blades of Chaos and stuff like that are.
All right.
So,
now,
now,
everything we just said just goes directly to Argosax.
Okay, so I did mention this initially. Someone commented, and Zim was a lot more upset about this than I am, but I'm kind of upset about this just thinking about the sheer volume of stupidity that was associated with that statement. Maybe it was just made out of ignorance, perhaps, probably. But the amount of evidence that I had to provide, basically, someone asserted that Argosax the Chaos, mainly because he's in DMC2, which people say, that's an unfinished game, therefore you just fucking die to Kratos. They said that Kratos would
basically clap Argosax the Chaos.
Yeah, no. No.
I would like to point out that Argosax, like the only win con that you could give is if he was able to affect him on the conceptual level or use like the absorption of the Blade of Olympus. As I already explained, the concept stuff doesn't matter, even if we use without POC, because all the status conditions and everything, they're crazy. But Blade of Olympus also doesn't matter, and it also doesn't work on normal demons either. Because, fun fact, I didn't include this one here, but this technically still applies. When the demon world is falling into the human world, basically it absorbs it directly and is absorbing it, infusing into it. And the demons are completely unaffected by this. They don't get absorbed by this at all. So, like, energy absorption and stuff like that wouldn't be applicable to them either. Because the demon world is literally able to absorb all things and all forms of energy in reality, and it can't affect demons.
Listen, listen. There's a lot more stuff we could say here regarding Argosax, but since we're already about to hit 3 hours on this, just to put a cap in this, I'm just gonna read his description. This isn't even Despair embodied. This is the first form. Overlord of Chaos that one time held most his hands most of the demon world and subdued many demons, but defeated by Sparta, was waiting for a time of resurrection. Possesses both the forms and abilities of every demon. Every power, even the unique ones, specific characters that we just mentioned, it's his.
All the complete erasure of the fallen priest, the stupid curses of the angel of damnation, the immortality of the morning banshee, all of Mundus's powers, all of Sparta's powers, all of Dante Virgil's powers, all Doppelganger's powers, every single demon that could have presented an argument or a threat to Kratos, all belongs to Argosax, and he has a direct statement in his Despair embodied state that he is blazing with endless energy. So he has infinite stamina, all this conceptual stuff. He can regenerate from anything. He can live basically forever, and he has composite DMC powers.
He's also the only confirmed immortal we know of. Just to be clear, in-game gold orbs can resurrect even Dante from what would be considered death, and he's the only one we know of.
Keep in mind, immortality, by the context of a verse where every single character has 6 different types of immortality. I don't know what immortality he's running, but if it allows him to be better than all of those, then
we call it layered immortality now.
Busted. But I was gonna say that basically, whoever said that you could beat Argosax the Chaos with like powerful Blade of Olympus, Blades of Exile, whatever the hell you were arguing. No. So you have no arguments.
Yes, this 2 hours of this video was just build up to say you don't beat Argosax, and you really don't beat basically anybody else here either.
With or without POC.
Yes, this was the build up just to tell you don't beat Argosax. This was the whole reason I put you through 2 hours and 51 minutes of this,
and
just to
15 to 20 hours worth of scripting. Good God!
Just to say you don't beat Argosax. This was the finale. It was all for this. If they had shown up anywhere else, I would not have given a single fuck.
No, seriously, I wouldn't have had to script anything.
In fairness, well, they probably haven't made it this far, but if they did, I hope this at least gives them some appreciation of the fact of even during that debate you guys had, that there's so much evidence there.
Like 5 of these scans, I was like, oh my God.
Which unfortunately did not help matters, but so, oh my God, it's 2 hours and 52.
Yes.
Woo! Good thing you made. Good thing.
You want to end it with even 3 hours? We can just talk for like 8 minutes.
You know. Let's talk for about 8 mintes. Fuck it. Let's make it a full 3 hours, and then they can tell us later on that I'm not going to be able to watch 3 hours worth of material.
They'll just tell you they're too good for that anyway, right? I was going to say that for the Gaming Muse thing, the Gaming Muse actually presented a video, and Zim will link this in the channel below.
Yeah, there's some things I'll have to link for sure.
She actually provided when she was she made a video going over DMC2's like lore and a lot of the meaning of its aims. She actually explains, and I'm gonna read what she said verbatim, that for Argosax, that one of his names in Japanese is Kanten no Hao, translated as Dominator of Chaos. But once again, it's an ancient Chinese mythological reference. Huden, or Kakten, as he's known in Japanese, is the name of a mythological creature with no face. and the term referring to the primordial chaos of creation. So, what this means is that Argosax's name, Chinese, but his name in Japanese is a word translated from Chinese. And what it means, from where he's based, is primordial chaos. That is the meaning of his name. That is the area, as mentioned here, as also mentioned in the demon scan. It is the original existence, the true reality that exists in DMC, from which all things spawn. That is the meaning of the concept of Argosax's power and his existence. So, I want you to consider that when you think about the fact that he has the powers and abilities of every single demon. And that he happens to square up to the demon that has a name that means imagined universe and ate a fruit that views everything as an imagined universe. A coincidence? Perhaps not.
Also, on top of that, it's like, again, like, since demonic power, the fruit, by default of eating the fruit, you would get in that higher dimensionality, since its entire purpose is to give you its power. And Dante, by the time of DMC 1, can rival that power in base. There are demons in DMC 2 who can actually fight him. Arius can technically fight him.
Sotaris can fight him. Bulwark can fight him.
A lot of people can fight Dante. And you really think, like, Dante, for sure, like, there are arguments for 5D Dante by this point in base. And that's not including that Argosax has statements of transcending all living things, or Arius claims he could.
He literally states in the videos that I provided that now give me the Arcanas, I will take over the power of Argosax. I will achieve absolute wisdom. I will become an all-powerful immortal. I will achieve absolute wisdom and transcend all. Then when Dante fights him later, he's like, I must attain the power of Argosax or I cannot transcend all living things.
So, yeah, like, DMC2 is not the one you're beating!
Also, Despair Embodied is literally created by his concept to be the perfect being. He's actually supposed to be, his design is taking cues from the androgynous human, the ultimate symbol of alchemy, the idea of the sun and moon combined and other such motifs. It's meant to be a perfect, everlasting being. So he is intended to be perfect. He is actually supposed to be the perfect being.
He is.
And he actually qualifies for transduality as well, which means that things like certain dualist systems, such as the sun and moon, other such ways, things that go hand in hand, time and space, life and death, things like that, based on his description, those things also don't apply to him. So,
yeah,
I just want to point out, like, of all the people that you could say you could swap hands with, why the fuck would you say Argosax? That is literally the worst character in the series to square your arguments up against.
He's literally the U-Watch of DMC. We had a U-Watch before Bleach did.
Yeah, far before we invented the concept.
He's composite DMC.
You merely adopted it. I molded it. I was born. So, I don't remember what Bane says, but
wow,
you were molded by it. I was.
Don't attempt a reference you can't handle, little boy.
I can't do it. I can't. I butchered it. I'm sorry. You know the meaning.
Yeah.
Basically, Yuha adopted it. Argosax molded it and was born in it.
Yes.
Literally.
So, again, like, this entire video was just made because of all the shitty on DMC2. Because, again, I personally think, well, I could have personally thought at one point that Kratos could have beat DMC3 and stuff until the Immortalities came along, etc. Like, a lot of shit came along. But DMC2 is where you kind of, even with your guys' best, or not best scaling, with your guys' more accepted scaling.
With your positions, I'm not arguing whether or not they're correct with what you believe.
This is like the first game where we can probably easily argue or have a solid argument that you don't fly here. This is your no-fly zone.
Well,
technically DMC,
before, the other games are no-fly zones as well. DMC2 is just where the Demon King level enemies just start shitting themselves out. That's all. That's where it becomes blatantly baby easy. You don't get to continue anymore.
So yeah,
But the POC makes it so that there is no scenario. You don't get to continue, which is why we also kind of made the protagonist swaps. Because if we don't give concessions, you cannot make it in this verse.
unfortunately, yes. Because again, and as far as I know, no resistance to the passives whatsoever. It's just to clarify the situation. Unfortunately, I'm probably gonna get some messages later that are probably gonna, or I'll get some messages later, some comments later saying shit like, "What's going on here? What the fuck are you talking about?" We've shown all the scans for the most part, and I think we've shown enough scans to show that even if we didn't show a scan, it does exist.
Watch them complain about like the first 5 minutes of my scaling summary and completely ignore 95% of the evidence I presented. That's what it's gonna be.
Well, I hope I fucking showed your evidence in tandem correctly, but either way, I showed all of your scans like fucking at least a couple of times. So except for the videos. So yeah, it's just meant to show that like the whole point of this video is just show that this is not the one you guys win. This is not the final boss you guys have like the easiest time with.
Yeah. So not any of the bosses you have the easiest time with.
Well, no, like yeah, because like technically, if you argue it like with the fruit statement, by default, whatever you scale the demon world and the human world two-dimensionally, Boondis would automatically see it as like an illusion. So by default, like anyone who scales to him just sees it as like 5D.
The problem is there are people who scale to the Demon Kings in every fucking game.
Yeah, no.
And even if they don't, they're the ones at the end of DMC3 are approaching Demon King level.
Yeah, because especially with dimensional tiering, because if you take dimensional tiering at face value, then even Virgil by the events of DMC3, because Mundus is afraid to fight him even while weakened, could potentially be argued for fucking 5D. But
no,
that's it. We just crossed the 3-hour threshold. So
right,
with that said, ladies and gentlemen, thank you guys for your time as always. Have a nice day. I'll see you guys on the next streamer video, and we'll see if Mangler can join us. Take care, everybody.